right. So we'll kind of go a little bit over setting up a dev environment. When it comes to this stuff, it's very opinionated. There's no kind of one, dev environment that you're going to have for the rest of your life or whatnot. It's kind of it's an ever-growing process. You're going to tweak. You may work on a new project. And you may need to kind of incorporate that project into it. So this is just kind of a minimal, here's what you need on your computer to at least, work on projects on your own. But a lot of the stuff is very opinionated. People's going to have, their own preferences of how they like to customize or set up certain things. Other people are going to have their own ways. So this is just kind of something. You feel free to, build on top of it. If you have more questions, you can really get into the nitty gritty and really customize all these things, so we're not really going to go super in depth into all the customization. But if you ever have any questions or if you wanted to jump in any of that kind of stuff, always feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to help out. But we're going to be going over the full stack dev environment guide. So if you log into the LMS and then if you navigate to your class or above if you sign in as a student, which I can do just to show that flow. But if you sign into the LMS, there's going to be a guides drop down. And then inside the guides drop down, there is a post program. And then there's a development environment guide. And that'll be the kind of guide that we're using as a reference. So if you want to follow that up to, or pull it up to follow along or refer back to, this will be kind of referencing. So there's a wide variety of categories that could include. The main things that we're going to go over is we're going to go over some web browser stuff. You need to have a terminal, which all of you probably already have. We need to make sure that you have Node and NPM. We'll make sure that you're using Git and IDE, and then a database. We'll go over setting up a full stack project. So once we kind of get to the database portion and whatnot, we'll have you install your database, and then we'll kind of set up a full stack project together, just to kind of go through that flow of how you would know of how to start it. I am on a Mac, so we have Gerardo also here in person who's on Windows. So we're going to kind of be doing a little bit of like a tag team option. Like I may show the Mac flow, and then Gerardo will jump in and he'll show kind of the Windows flow. And then as we're working on installing stuff, if anyone has any questions, stop and reach out along the way, and we'll jump in. But there may be some kind of minor differences that both Gerardo and I will touch on, depending on if it's a Mac or if it's on Windows. Any questions so far? Okay. So to start with, since all of you are probably going to have to do some sort of front-end development, you're going to need some sort of web browser, which all of you probably already have because you have to use the web anyway. But I recommend having a few different types of web browsers because we need to make sure that our application not only looks and works correctly in one web browser, but we want to make sure that we check multiple. Because each web browser, depending on if it's Chromium-based or not, they may have their own, CSS implementation and ways of implementing that. So we want to make sure that we check that. So you're going to need to have at least one Chromium-based browser. So if you have Chrome already installed, that's great. But I recommend installing Chrome. It's the most popular and used web browser. So the most, used browser that people will be using to look at your application will be Chrome. So it's helpful to at least have Chrome installed so that you can check. If you're on Mac, then you already have Safari, so you can use Safari. If you're on Windows, you can use Edge. But another one that I would install is Firefox. So those are kind of the three kings that I would make sure that everyone has have Chrome, have Firefox, and then depending on if you're on Mac or Windows, you can just use the built-in Safari or built-in Edge. There's more and more web browsers. We're kind of reaching that day of age now where there's a lot of web browsers coming out. So for instance, I use one called Zen browser, which is built on top of Firefox, but I like it because it has other customization features. So I can pin certain tabs that I care about, or like I can have spaces. So this is my workspace. This is kind of my personal space, and I can kind of easily swipe between. So there's multiple different web browsers, but you at least kind of want one that belongs to three of the kind of three main ones. So take a moment, if you don't already, make sure that you go and install Chrome. Make sure that you go and install Firefox. And then if you should already have one of the built-in between Safari or Edge. So just take a moment to go through and install one of those. While you're doing that, I'll reference a website. So there's a website called Can I Use? So as we're talking about different browsers, like why do we need to have these different browsers? Different browsers are going to have different forms of support. So something like a CSS property, a certain CSS property may actually only be supported in certain browsers at that moment. So for instance, if we search for aspect ratio, this website is going to show us what the kind of support is looking like for the aspect ratio property. So this you can see right now, it shows us that we have a 94.77%. So most, if not all web browsers pretty much support this nowadays. It shows us the individual web browsers. So it'll show us, Chrome, Edge, Safari, the specific versions of those browsers and which ones they do. So this is just really helpful as you're working on projects and maybe you notice some things of why they're not looking the same in certain browsers compared to others. It may be because you might be using a CSS property that just hasn't been supported in that browser yet. So that's why it's helpful to just be able to go and check them out, check it out. Okay, as you're installing your web browser, I also recommend getting some extensions that'll help you out. So for instance, for React, there's a React developer tools. So depending on if you're on Chrome or Firefox, I'll go to the Firefox because I'm on a Firefox web extensions. Search here, yeah, developer tools. So for instance, if you're on Chrome, you can go to the Chrome Web Store. If you're on Firefox, you can go to the Firefox, go to the Chrome Web Store. At least one extension that I recommend everyone installing is going to be React DevTools. This will help you out a whole lot. It's going to add a new tab to your kind of inspector so that you can view all of your individual components. You can see the specific state of those components, all the props being passed into it. So it's just a nice little kind of elements tab that we usually use for HTML but for our kind of React components. So I would at least recommend installing that one. And then from there, feel free to go and find any other ones that you find would be helpful. For instance, a extension that I like to use, I can showcase it on my website. I have this extension called Wappalizer, and this will show me all the specific frameworks that a website was built with. So if you've ever gone to like a website and you're kind of curious, like, oh, I wonder what they're using. I have a little extension that tells me, so you can see my project was built in Next. It was deployed via Vercel. I'm using Tailwind for my styling. So just one extension. If you find it cool and whatnot, feel free to. I have another one like Fake Filler. So if I ever have to go and fill out forms because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to fill out the forms every time, I use a Fake Filler and then it just kind of pre-populates my forms. I don't know if there's an easy form where I can show this. We have a contact that is. Go and if I hit Fake Filler, you can see it just filled in the whole form for me with lorem ipsum. So especially when you're developing, if you think you're working on your final project and how many times you had to create all that dummy data, it's an extension that I just use to kind of help speed it up for whenever I add the forms, but there's a whole bunch. Another handy one that I like is Color Pick Eyedropper. So if you're ever like on a website and you want to find like the specific color that something is, a specific hex code, they have this little color picker eyedropper, and you can go click on a specific element, and it'll give you the exact hex code that you can use. So this is what I'm kind of saying is that this dev environment is very opinionated. I like extensions. You talk to Robert. Robert doesn't really have a lot of extensions. He just his life is the internet at this point. He kind of just does everything on his own. So everyone has their own kind of preference to customizations. But you at least, in a minimum, need, I would say, 3 different kind of at least plugins.
So which tool is
The form one that I was just referencing?
Yes.
It's called Fake Filler.
Fake.
Yeah,
It's like in Chrome Web Store.
yep, just in the Chrome Web Store, just like the other ones. Any questions about web browsers?
So this one we just installed, the React Dev tool shows you how many.
It'll show you all your components. So if you're like, just like how usually you have the inspector for your HTML where you can see the DOM, it kind of does that but for your components.
It also shows the state on props. It's really, really handy.
Yeah.
That's the only one I use.
Yeah.
But that one is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
You can actually go in and edit the state too. So like, oh, why isn't this working? This seems to should be true or false.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and edit it directly on there. Very, very useful.
Yeah, sure.
This page doesn't appear to be seeing the post program development.
Oh yeah.
You guys using?
Yeah, it'll tell you when it's using it, and it'll recommend that you download it.
Yeah. Any other questions with web browsers? I'll make a little side trip. If you've seen these, but you've already been curious what they're for. I think I mentioned this in one of my Q&As for anyone that was. But if you've ever seen snippets online where it says like -webkit, -o, -moz, -ms, this is referring to specific browsers. So just like how I was talking about can I use, how different browsers have different types of support. So for instance, maybe Mozilla, the way that they would want you to use the user select is you would have to do -moz -user select. And now in Mozilla, which is Firefox, you're using the user select property. Or MS, I think this is Microsoft Edge. So in Edge, use the user select property. So this is a tool called Auto Prefixer. Usually, sometimes depending on your projects, it may be included in your build step and it'll do it for you automatically. So not necessarily something you need to worry about, but if you ever see snippets online with these prefixes, or if you ever notice that your CSS isn't behaving in a certain browser, and it should be, then you may need to add a prefix. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. This is why it's helpful to check the different browsers, see if you notice any discrepancies, and then, we may have missed the prefix, or we may need to go and add them.
Yeah, that Can I Use website is awesome.
Yeah.
So just relevant story, I actually built, when I was a student, I built my project and I didn't check it. And it's not just CSS, the push API doesn't work on Safari for iOS.
Wow.
So it crashes altogether. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I'm doing something different. Nobody's doing push notifications. I put that in there. And it just totally crashed on iOS. I don't have an iPhone. I didn't check it. And then I went to push it, and I had my instructor look at it. Hey, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
I checked it on my wife's phone. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't.
Dang.
So, yeah, actually, I looked at it right now. Even to this day, that was like, I don't know, a year ago, more.
Still not supported.
Not supported on iOS. So, yeah, definitely check that one in. Some feature you might think is really cool.
Yeah.
Crashes your application.
Yeah. Which brings up a good point too, is like there's versions in JavaScript, right, too? Like, you have ECMAScript versions, so you might have heard us reference ES6, right, when constant let got added before there was only var. So every year or, JavaScript gets new things added, and it takes time for all the browsers to support those new things added. So there may be new methods that exist in JavaScript that maybe you want to take advantage of. Maybe some browsers haven't actually implemented those, which is why way back in the day, everyone used jQuery, because jQuery handled all the kind of cross-browser support for you.
It's like an old, right?
Yeah, it's like an old JavaScript library. Yeah. Awesome. Any more questions about browsers? Okay. So the next thing is terminal. Now this is where you can really get crazy, and you can really go super into the customization portion. I know people that write all of their code via the terminal. They use it as their kind of IDE, as their code editor, and they do everything they have via the terminal. You can go super crazy and customize it. You can just use the built-in terminal provided to you by your operating system. So at a minimum, Mac, you already have the built-in terminal app, so you can just use that. If you want to install another terminal, you're welcome to. Windows, you have the command prompt, and you have, I think there's technically PowerShell.
PowerShell is the one that allows you to do most of the things, but you do have to learn some different syntax.
Yeah.
For certain.
Yeah, and you're gonna probably doing most of your Bash interacting with the terminal via Bash anyway. So for Windows, you're gonna want to install Git Bash, which in theory I think you probably should already have once you had to do the setup in order to set up the dev environment. But I would double check. So if you're on Windows, search to see if you have Git Bash. Mac, you already have the built-in terminal. So we're not gonna dive too deep into it, but just to show you the power of some things that you can do with your terminal, I'll minimize some of this stuff. So for instance, here is like an example of my terminal. So I'll restart it just so we can see the flow. So for instance, like when I start my terminal, I have this thing that spits out like a whole bunch of specs. It just shows a whole bunch of stuff about my computer, the time, the theme, anything that I'm using. I've created a whole bunch of like aliases or like shortcuts that I can do. So for instance, if I ever needed to quickly get my IP address, like I quickly, created a shortcut to do that. I created, we were to look at the config. So I have this whole config file. And you can see I created all of these aliases. So when I just typed in IP, you can see under the hood, what it technically did was IP config get IP address enz 0. Or for these Git stuff. So a lot of you always do git add, dot, or you always do git status. So I can create a git alias to speed it up. So now in my terminal, rather than doing git status, I can do git s, and it does the exact same thing. This is where, it kind of gets opinionated. You can really go crazy and you can customize your terminal however you like. I'm a big customization kind of guy, so I like to do that kind of stuff. I get a lot of fun and satisfaction out of it, but some people don't. So if you just kind of want a terminal that just kind of has everything already kind of built in, you can install something called Warp.
Yeah.
Go back. Warp. Let me pull it up. Is it on Windows now too?
It is on Windows.
Oh, it is on Windows? Awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah. So there's there's a terminal called Warp, and then Gerardo is telling me it is also now on Windows. I think it wasn't for a while, but I think now it is. So if you want just a terminal kind of built out of the box, it has everything already needed for you. You don't have to worry about customizing it. Warp is good. I think they have a lot of other features. I think I haven't even really tapped
AI
into.
feature is the best one. Like especially like I mentioned, it actually runs over PowerShell if you're in Windows. So if you don't remember the equivalent for PowerShell for the Bash, you just put it in, the AI will help you
figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a terminal. It really uses AI to kind of help you out. It'll already have a lot of the autocomplete, tab complete done for you. Or if you were kind of building your own terminal setup, you may have to kind of install things to enable that.
Sean, we can, of course, kind of common question. We can create our own aliases in Git Bash, right? Because of Linux.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the way that you technically customize, and I'd be happy to meet with anyone individually that ever wanted to. But you have .bash files, or on Mac, I think you technically use CSH by default. So you have a .csh config file. But you would essentially just edit those config files. You would edit like your kind of bash config, or you would edit your CSH config, and that would allow you to set up those aliases or any of those other shortcuts that you want. So I recommend if you want to go crazy and get into customizing, if you're on Mac, there's something called OhmyZSH. I recommend checking that out. We're not necessarily going to go through and do it all together, but if you ever want help, I'd be happy to meet up with you one-on-one and help you out there. And then Bash, I would just recommend either downloading Warp or just using that Git Bash terminal. And Mac, welcome to use Warp 2 if you kind of want just the all included or kind of create your own. Any questions about anything related to the terminal? We have specifically customized your bash for you. So in your LFZ environment, if you like the way that like your terminal looks and all of that stuff, and if you're on Windows, you can reach out to me and I can send you the bash stuff, and then we can get it so that it's like the exact same replica of how it is. But other than that, there you go. Anything else about the terminal?
So just question, so we're gonna build the project according to what we have, not inside the other thing, so we're gonna use our machine. We're gonna use our like the local VS Code, not the.
Right. Yes. Now you're using things that are installed locally on your computer rather than things that were previously installed in a Docker container.
Okay. Instead of using.
So everything that you've been doing up until this point in LearningFuze lives inside of a Docker container. It does not live anywhere on your actual computer. It lives inside a Docker container. The Docker container lives on your actual computer, so kind of lie, but in theory, it's inside the container. So now all of your projects are going to be on your computer. So if you were like on Mac, if you were to go to the Finder or whatnot, you're going to go view the actual files on your computer. They're no longer going to be inside that document. Okay. We'll move on to Node and NPM. I'll try my best to stop and ask for questions too, but if anyone ever just needs me to pause or you're catching up, feel free to just give me a shout. But the next thing we want to do is we want to install Node and NPM. The easiest way to manage this is to use a tool called NVM, which will allow you to easily switch Node versions. This will differ, I believe, a bit between Windows and Mac. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Mac first. So if you're on Windows, I would not follow along with me. I would just kind of stop and watch. And then on Mac, you will follow along with me. So let me close out of all of these. So you'll click on NVM right here. Again, this is just Mac. I think Windows specifically has their own package, which we'll track down in a second. So we'll use NVM. If you scroll down to the table of contents, there's installing and updating. You can click on that. And it's going to take you right here. And we're going to have to run a couple of commands. So you can do either of these. So we'll run this first one. So copy this first command that starts with Perl. Again, this is Mac only. So copy that command. Go ahead and open up a terminal, either Warp if you just installed it, or the built-in Mac terminal. And then go ahead and paste that command that you just copied. I already have it installed, so mine's already installed. Okay. You can't run. You have to use. You can't use the. So you're on Windows, so don't follow along yet.
Yeah, I'll help you when we get to that.
And you can't use the terminal inside VS Code because that's the LFZ terminal. It's inside your LFZ environment. You have to use the Windows terminal, the Git bash terminal. That's
This is my LFZ.
I know, but that's LearningFuze. You need to use the Git bash package so you can start.
And then if you already have it, which you should, just click and get that. There you go. That one? That's
Yeah.
the
And then
This is my one.
just for reference,
It's not like that.
Rukaya, you're on Mac? Ahmed, are you on Mac or Windows?
I'm on Windows.
You're on Windows? Okay. Trey will be on Windows. Caroline, you're on Mac? You're on Mac? Okay, sweet.
Oh,
So
Trey's on
Caroline and Rukaya, did you do the curl one, or you just ran that? Okay, in the terminal, did it say anything about adding a string to ZSHRC?
No, it only says to close and reopen your terminal to start using.
In theory, it should have added something to the config file for you. We can add it manually if it didn't. But now what we'll do is we're going to need to quit your terminal. So close out of your terminal. So you can hit Command Q as a hotkey, or you can close out of it. Reopen your terminal. And now, in theory, if you type in NVM, you should get a message back, and then it should say Node Version Manager. If it says something like NVM command not found, then that means that we'll have to go and add something to the config. But if you just type in NVM, you should get something back.
It's not found for me. I think I should have appended that. Yeah, link.
Okay, Rukaya, did it work for you? Okay, it worked for you. All right, Caroline, can you share your screen real quick?
I have my own GitLab.
Okay, now Caroline, can you do well, let me send you a command to run real quick.
Don, I got the same thing Caroline did, if you would send it to me as well.
Hold up, I heard someone.
Oh, Trey, but aren't you on Windows? You're on Mac too?
No, I'm on Mac.
Oh, Trey, you're on Mac?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then Trey, you said you're having the same issue as Caroline where it says command not found?
It's exactly the same.
Okay, so what you guys are gonna need to do, Caroline, can you do an ls-a? Okay, so you don't have a ZSHRC, which is probably why. So Trey, you're gonna need to do the same thing. So Trey, can you do an ls-a? And then do you see a file that says .zshrc?
I do not have it.
Okay, so now what both of you are gonna need to do is in your terminal, write touch, and then .zshrc. And then do another ls-a, Caroline, please. Awesome. So now you see how you have a .zshrc file. So now what we're going to need to try rerunning that NVM command that you ran before, and now see if it'll re-add to the file now. Otherwise, we can add it manually.
Sean, I don't have that file either. I see the ZSH history and the sessions, but I don't see the RC one.
But yours still says,
Yeah, I got all of those commands, the NVM commands.
interesting.
Yeah.
If it works, it works. I mean, I'm only having them create the file because it's needed for this. So if yours is working, then it works. But yeah. No, so Caroline, you need to rerun the curl command. Yeah. Okay, now close your terminal. And then reopen it. So now you use NVM and it worked. Okay. And then Trey, can you let me know if it's working on your side now?
I got it this time.
You got it? Sweet. So you typed in NVM and now you everyone's getting a message back?
Correct.
Sweet. Awesome. So screen again. Actually, I should wait to do the next step until Windows gets installed. Do you already have it pulled up?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. So I'm gonna have Gerardo's gonna step in here, and now he's gonna assist the Windows folks.
The mic's right here, right?
Yeah, Mike is
Oh,
gonna do that. Yeah.
All right. And we, this one is a different link, so I'll post it on Slack, or I'll send it as a message on Slack. Which channel are we on right now?
It's in the C1224 post program, I think. 1224 post program. You are in it. There's no C. It's just 1224 post program.
Oh, okay.
Over here, right above the technology stack.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so for Windows users, I just went ahead and posted a link on the chat. It's gonna open to this page right here. And the installation is a little different. We don't get to do a fancy Perl command that just does everything for us. So from here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna want to download the installer. It's this file right here. So just scroll down or Control F to find it. It says download now. You're gonna click on that. And it's going to install, it's gonna download a file for you. From here, you can do NVM setup, this one right here. So we'll just go ahead and download that. And then once that is done, just go ahead and open it, run the installation.
Do we need to download two or only?
You're just gonna download the one that says nvm setup.exe.
So we open page.
Yeah. You're clicking where it says download now, then go to nvm setup.exe, and then you're gonna get something that looks like this. So you're gonna follow the installation guide, or I accept the agreement. Yeah, you're gonna determine where it's installed. The default is just fine. Click next. Where the local version is gonna be next, and then you're gonna wanna have all these clicked or checked, which will be done by default. So next, you don't have to put your email address on there, and ready to install. So go ahead and click install.
It says node 1.12.2 already installed the one.
Okay, so I'm getting this right here because I already have it installed. Do you want NVM to control this version? Yeah. You shouldn't get that message if it's the first time. Yes. I do have multiple versions of Node. Yes. Okay. Gonna be asking me that. I'm just gonna put no. NVM cannot run parallel. Okay. So you should not be getting this message. This is just because I already have it installed. So for you, just follow these steps to the installation, and mine's gonna roll back. But
So you're just using PowerShell.
you can run it on PowerShell, and I was just gonna demonstrate that on PowerShell since that's my preferred Windows terminal. But first, did you already install it?
Yeah, I saw it on this page. There.
Okay, so then let me go ahead and on the screen right here, you'll be able to see it. Here's my PowerShell, and I don't know if the fact that it failed the installation is going to give me any problems. I might have to restart it, but I'll just check. Should be able to type NVM, and you're going to get this message. It is not identical to the one that the Mac users have and the one that Sean just showed, but it is very similar, and it also shows the commands that you can use. So if you are on Windows and when you type NVM on your terminal, you are not getting this, let me know.
No,
Okay, give me 1 second. And then yeah, so this is I wanted to show everyone in Git Bash, but this is you got it?
Yeah, yeah.
What was it?
He was using the terminal that after he installed NVM, it opened a terminal. He wasn't using just like PowerShell from Windows. It was like
okay.
it opened one after installation.
Gotcha. So, and I was just going to demonstrate why I prefer PowerShell, one of the many examples, but here I am on git bash, and if I type the npm command, I'm gonna get something like this. You're gonna see stuff like this with different tools. Like later we'll talk about the GitHub CLI. That's gonna give you a problem too. So instead, I just went ahead and did it on NVM. I'm sorry, on PowerShell, NVM on PowerShell, and I do get this message right here. So if you are on Windows and you don't see this, please let me know. Who else is on Windows?
I think it was on Med.
Okay.
Yeah, so mine opened in PowerShell, and you said you wanted us to run NVM.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So mine opened in PowerShell after installation.
Yeah, so close that terminal and then reopen like PowerShell on your own.
Okay.
And then once you open up PowerShell on your own, then if you type in NVM into the terminal, then you should see like you should get feedback.
Okay. Yeah, I see it now.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing I will mention about using it on Windows is if you want to know what commands to use to install the version that you want, the guide that you have from LearningFuze is a little different. We saw that with the double flags that were not the same. So you can reference this document right here directly. If you NVM install, NVM use here. This is the one. So if you want to get the latest version, you would do NVM install latest. Also, you can just use the NVM command and it will tell you what options are available for subcommands on this. But really, mainly what you're going to need is the latest version, the NVM install and the NVM use, so you can determine which one you're going to use. There are situations in which you might need a different version. That does happen. For the most part, they are backwards compatible. So as long as you have the latest version, you should be fine. I have had it where it happens that there's a new version I need to upgrade because some features are just not available. So that's when you'll want to do that. But you can install different versions using NVM. Okay, so if everyone is good, Sean, I'll stop sharing so you can take back control.
Oh, you're gonna get spot?
What, do you guys want me to do NVM install?
No, you already did we're gonna do that next.
I think you guys.
Of course. All right. So now, once everyone has NVM installed, as Gerardo mentioned, there's going to be, depending on if you're on Windows or if you're on Mac, the command will be a little bit different. So if you're on Mac, what you can do is you can do NVM install --LTS. If you're on Windows, you just said it was latest, I think. Yeah. So on Windows, all you'll do is NVM install latest. If you're on Mac, you're gonna do --. You can do --, latest, I think, or you could also do LTS. They mean the same thing, kind of latest. We're gonna do NVM install --, LTS. Now it's going to go install the latest stable node version, which in this case will be 22.14. You can see it also changed the NPM version. Now we're using NPM T.9.2. If you ever need to see all of your installations, I think it's list. So if you do NVM list, it's going to print out all of the different node versions that you currently have installed. For the most part, you probably won't need to change node versions all that often. As you get a job, you may have to work on a project that requires a specific node version. So on my last job, I was at an agency, so it was very common for me to have like a node version for each project and having to constantly switch between them. So NVM was very helpful for that case. For your case, you can probably just always use the latest for your side projects and whatnot, and it's not that big of a deal. But if you needed to install a specific node version, or you're working on a project and they say that you have to use a specific one, then the way that we can install that version is we'll use NVM. So we'll say, hey, NVM, what do we want to do? I want to install something, and then what do we want to install? And then here's where we would put the version number. So let's say I wanted to install version, I I don't know, 21.5. Now if I do nvm install 21.5, you can see it's going to say downloading and installing node version 21.5. And now it automatically switched me to it. Now it says now using node version 21.5. If I do a node-v to confirm my node version, you can see it printed out 21.5. So if you ever need to install a specific node version, you'll just do nvm install and then the version number. If you need to switch to a new version, so you can see in my list up here, I have all of these already installed. So now if I want to go to a specific one, I'll do nvm use, and then you'll put the version number. So now if I were to do 20.17, and now you can see it says now using node version 20.17, and now it's letting me use that one. If you ever want to just go back to the latest, I think you can do use --LTS on Mac, or if you're on Windows, I think it'll probably be
nvm use latest.
latest.
Yeah.
So then if you're on Windows, it'll be nvm use latest. If you're on Mac, then you can just do nvm use --LTS, and then it'll switch you to the latest node version.
For the Windows people, every single command that Sean just used right now, nvm use and nvm install, it's going to be identical in the syntax. So if you want to reference this video recording later, that's the same. The only one that's different is that nvm use, it's not flag LTS, it's just nvm use latest, and that's it. Same goes for installation, just no flags for LTS, just nvm install latest.
Oh, we have installed 21.5. That's the latest.
No,
No, 21.5 is old.
Yeah, 23. What is it? 23.11 is the latest.
If you just do nvm install latest on since you're on Windows, it'll both install the latest and switch it.
Okay. So,
Okay. Now, before we move on, everyone is probably going to want to have TypeScript and TSX installed, just because you'll probably be using TypeScript. So you can install packages globally. So you can see this -G flag right here. So if we ever do npm install and if we do -G, then this is going to install it globally. So throughout our whole computer. So now I'll have access to TypeScript anywhere. I don't have to install it on a per project basis. There'll be times you probably still would want to for everyone else on your team, but it's still helpful if you ever know that you just want to have a global npm package. So for TypeScript and TSX, we'll install these just so you can always compile or run your backend files. So just copy this command from the guide and go on back here and then run it, and then it'll go install those two packages as global dependencies.
is it the same for
Quick question.
It'll be the same exact thing for Windows.
I had just a quick question about the what is the main difference between the global and the local space in this context of
Only the -G, that's what makes it global, but global just means like anywhere on your computer. So for instance, I have a whole let me get there. You see all these folders, right? These are all the different projects that I have on my computer. So if I installed something globally, I now have access to that package in every single one of those folders. I can now use TypeScript anywhere on my whole computer system because I installed it globally. But if I did npm install without the -G, it's only installing it in that project. So if I was inside of chess, and if I did npm install TSX, it's only installing TSX in the context of chess. I don't have it in my whole computer. I only have it in that one project. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sweet. Awesome. What's up, Noah? npm install this one right here.
Yeah.
That one? Yep, that's it. Any other questions about Node or npm? Okay. Then, next thing we'll go over is gonna be version control. So, pretty much most developers will use Git as a way of managing it. Git doesn't always need to be associated with GitHub. There's lots of different Git providers. For instance, at my last job, we used GitLab. We didn't use GitHub, and now we use GitHub here at LearningFuze. But they all still use Git, which is why we had you do Git for every single exercise to kind of get you used to it. So in theory, you should already have Git, I believe, set up and installed. An easy way to check is if you open up your terminal, and if you go to SSH git at github.com, if you run that in your terminal, you should get a message that says, hi, so-and-so, you successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access. If you don't get this message back, then that means you don't have an SSH key that's on GitHub yet. So then you don't have a way to communicate with GitHub, which we can do. But I think when you guys did your setup, you might have already done that. Yeah, Caroline?
So I'm wondering, is this the way we are communicating with GitHub is directly through our terminal and our local computer? So that's why we're installing things globally in our computer, so then we can control like GitHub, because until now we were. Okay, I'm confused. I just wanted to clarify what's changing in the environment compared to LearningFuze.
The only thing that's changing is that you are now having everything installed on your computer, and it no longer lives inside of a Docker container. Before, up until this point, every single thing you did at LearningFuze lives inside of a Docker container. So if you were to open up your Docker desktop, I don't have it open, so it'll take a
I
second.
wonder how I'm going to handle those loose fatal objects without the Docker, because before then I could just delete everything. Just joking.
I mean, it would be the same thing. Nothing changes. The only thing that's changing is that now you're installing things on your actual computer, whereas in before we gave you a pre-built environment that just kind of lived inside of a Docker container. But now it's just you're creating that environment yourself for you on your computer. But you would handle those errors the exact same way that you've been handling those errors now. My Docker is not seem to be loading.
Yeah, you do. You should have already had one, but did we cover that on the guide? I think he doesn't have a SSH key.
Yeah, I don't have SSH key.
If not, we can just I can help you with that.
Yeah.
There's also a guide on here.
Let me check to see if when anyone else ran this, did anyone else not get a message that said, let them know that they authenticated?
Sorry, did you say that we needed to we needed to create the SSH key prior to doing this command?
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Like before running the SSH and then the GitHub, was there a previous step?
No, all you need to do is just open your terminal. So either open Git Bash. You may need to open Git Bash rather than PowerShell, but I think in theory they both should work. But try opening Git Bash and then try running this SSH git at github.com, and then you should either get a message that says, hey, you've authenticated, or you should get a not successful.
Okay, yeah, that worked for me.
Sorry, Ahmed.
That worked. It worked on Git Bash.
It works. It works on Git Bash.
Okay.
It works. Great. Okay, so it seems like that is working. Caroline, did I answer all your questions? Did you have any more questions?
No, thank you. You answered all the questions. Thank you, Sean.
Great,
I have a
awesome.
question, Sean. What does GitHub does not provide shell access mean?
GitHub does not provide shell access means, you know how on your final project, when you deployed the EC2, I'm not sure if you've ever done it, but there was a connect button. And when you hit that connect button, you SSH'd in and then it opened up a terminal. So when it says GitHub does not provide shell access, it's saying that you did SSH to GitHub, but they're not gonna open up like a SSH shell for you to interact with them because, you know, they're like, oh, we don't provide that access. So that's all that's saying, is that they saw your SSH request, but, you know, they're not gonna give you access to their shell. Any other questions? Okay. We should check this actually before we move on. If you go to your terminal, and if you do git config -- global -- list, so git config -- global -- list, you should see some information. So for instance, you should see your name, you should see your email. So you'll run git config -- global -- list, and then all you should really see at least is your name and your email address. I have a little bit more, but if you don't see all that, that's totally fine. The main two things we're looking for is user.name and user.email. So we go to get back. So you can't, again, this is an LFZ's environment. So you can't do your testing here.
And that command will not work on PowerShell.
It won't work?
No,
Yeah.
I had never tried it before. I was just testing it right now. There's nothing on PowerShell. Most things work on PowerShell that don't work on Git Bash. But you're gonna have to go between one and the other.
Yeah.
One of the things is being
Open Git Bash. So whenever you have to open your terminals as their own now, you can't do it via VS Code. I mean, eventually you will, but that was LFZ's terminal. So now, if you do your git config -- global, no, global. So actually, yeah, global.
Global.
And then -- list. And then there you go. And name your email. Okay, did anybody run this and then not see their name in their email? Okay. In theory, everything should be good as far as Git is concerned. Now, there's more ways to interact with Git. For instance, we'll once we start going through setting up a project, we'll talk about how we can communicate with GitHub. There's a few different ways of how we can use Git. You know, we can do it via the command line. We can do it via VS Code. We can do it via the GitHub CLI. So we'll go over a few of the different ways and talk about them. But for now, as long as we have Git, you tested the SSH, you named your email in there, and it should be a good spot.
Do we need to use to stay on Git Bash or just use the PowerShell?
You can do most things on PowerShell, but you're gonna find that on Git Bash, the syntax is more similar to what you're used to. So it really is a matter of preference.
And as you were saying, there's going to be some commands that won't work in PowerShell. You'll have to use Git Bash. So for the majority of times, you can get away with using PowerShell, and then just maybe if a command's not working, try using it in Git Bash.
So if I do what you said, just install and you said like install npm install G TypeScript TSX. When I did it on PowerShell, it's already applied everything.
Yeah,
I don't need to do it.
No, yep, it'll be the same regardless of where you do it.
And PowerShell will let you do more things than Git Bash.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So the next thing is IDE. This is where the real opinions come out. Everyone and their mother has an opinion on the best IDE and what IDE you should use, and all yada yada yada. So it's just It's gonna be what works best for you. As of right now, you've been using LFZ code. So that has been a bundled version of VS Code that we gave you. You are at least going to want to install your own version. You also don't need to use VS Code if you don't want to. Everyone has their own preferred code editor. VS Code is by far and away the most popular one. It's generally what most people use. So it has the most extension support. So if you want to use that, that's the one that you have been using. Feel free to. There's plenty of other options out there. I can show you an example. Let me open up a project actually, because that'll be the best way to showcase it. So for instance, an IDE that I've been using is called Cursor. And Cursor essentially is VS Code, but it's VS Code with like built-in AI support. So for instance, I have like this little chat right here. You can see here's essentially like my chat with AI. I can choose the different AI model I would want to use. And you can see right here, I actually have two different ways I can ask it. I could just ask it a question, or you can see it says code base. So one of the things I like about Cursor is that it's AI that builds on top of my code. So it kind of scans my code and it channels its results based off of my code. So for instance, let's say I wanted to ask a question, what are all the properties that belong to my order interface? And then if I do ask my code base, you can see it says reading files. Now scanning all the different files in my code base. You can see, oh, based on the code in your code base, the order interface has these. And now it's giving me its answers based off of the code, my kind of code base. So I've been using Cursor. I like it because it's VS Code, which I've been used to, and now I get the added, functionality. But there's lots of other code editors out there. For instance, there's another one called Zed. Zed is one which is now taking forever to open up. You can see over here, they have this whole chat over here. And then you see over here, they have like channels. So Zed's whole goal is like collaboration. So you can like be on a team of developers and then you can chat about the project inside your code editor. And you can join like a coding session with someone and you can actually like see their IDE. And so you're peer programming with each other inside of the code editor. So it seems really cool. I'm a developer, so I don't have a lot of friends, so I haven't tested it. So I don't necessarily know how great the collaboration features are. So I haven't necessarily, tested it out. Like I said, there's people that purely do all of their editing via the terminal. So some people use NeoVim, and they'll do all of their, editing completely in the terminal, just like what I'm doing right here. So everyone has their kind of preferences to what they would like to do. Since what you used is VS Code, it's probably a good starting point. So like I said, we gave you VS Code, so you don't actually have your own version of VS Code installed. So what I would recommend doing is going and installing it. So go ahead and just go to that link for VS Code and then download it and start walking through and installing that. It won't screw up anything with your LFZ code. It'll keep it completely separate. So go ahead and install that. If you want to install your own IDE, feel free to do that. The one I was using was Cursor. So if you're curious about checking out the one I was using, feel free to give that one a shot. It's called Cursor. But at least install some sort of code editor, Visual Studio Code, whatever it is. So I'll give everyone a couple seconds to go through and do that. So go and set up a code editor. And I'm going to go grab a drink real quick, and then I'll be right back. Once you install an IDE, I recommend installing some extensions. Obviously, just like with the browser extensions and whatnot, these things can get opinionated. Kind of depends on the ones that you feel like you maybe most will utilize. For instance, if you write a lot of Tailwind, you'll probably want the Tailwind IntelliSense. This will do autocomplete. So as you start typing in BG, it'll pre-populate with all the built-in Tailwind classes. So it'll do that. Another one I like is auto rename tag. This makes it so that in your HTML, if you were to go change like the opening tag, it'll automatically change the closing tag for you. So if you go change like an anchor to a div or whatnot, it'll go do that one.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That one?
Auto rename tag.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really handy.
I missed
Oh,
the
it
other one.
doesn't do it.
It auto renames. So if let me create a file here. Create
That's like super minor, but I've always found it so annoying, like renaming something.
Yep. I have this HTML file here, right? And so let's say I create a div. And now let's say I'm like, oh, okay, well, rather than a div, I actually want this to be an anchor tag. And you can see all I did was change the opening tag, and it automatically changed the closing tag
Oh,
for me.
wow, that's.
So I want this to be a button. And you can see it automatically changed the closing
Yeah.
lines for me.
Saves like a whole second, but it actually.
But
Yeah.
those like seconds add up in like the long run of our project. So it is really, really handy.
That specifically is always
Yeah.
always bugged me. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but what about more extension? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, geez, no. I was just talking about one. We got auto rename tag. There's a whole bunch. For instance, better comments. If you're an organizational person and you like to separate your comments, you can see it like changes the colors. One that I definitely recommend every single person have is code spell checker. If you're anything like me and you make a lot of typos, then it helps to have that. So I definitely recommend having code spell checker. Everything else from there is really just kind of up to you. For instance, this color highlight, I'm colorblind, so it's really hard for me to like fully see colors. So I like the color highlight because it'll show the actual color that the hex code is, so I can kind of get a preview of it. I don't know, maybe you care about Discord and you want everyone on Discord to see what file you're working on. You could have a extension that does that. For instance, this one's a cool one. Doesn't really matter to you, but I find it interesting. Import cost. So it'll actually show me like my import statements. It'll show me the actual size of the things that I'm trying to import. So like, I guess as like a warning to like maybe make sure I don't necessarily import things that I don't need. So probably irrelevant to you, but I like those kind of cool stuff. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. This is where if you have any themes that you want to install, you can install themes from here as well too. So we had one already pre-selected for you in the LFZ environment. So if you want to use the same one, totally fine. If you want to find your own, also totally fine. I use one. This is the one I use, but I switch my themes pretty often. I get in like moods. I just feel inspired, you know. So
Which
yeah.
ones?
I have never changed.
You've never changed your theme? Yeah. See, it's like this is kind of what I'm saying is that like we have two developers here of like two completely different lifestyles of like how we run our things. It's like
And your terminal too, like yeah, it looks nice, but I've always done with the stock one. I just
Yeah.
do not like to.
exactly. And I know a lot of people that feel that way about like, you know, where it's like I want as minimal friction, like I just want to get up and going. Whereas in like I probably spend more time customizing than writing code sometimes just because it's like, you know, I'm having fun. What were you asking?
Well, which theme? The one you should download? The best
Well,
theme?
That's the one I use. It's literally called the best theme. Literally the one that I have. So that's the one that I use.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other ones. The main two that I switch between the best theme, and then I like the Capuchin Mocha or whatever.
Oh, for that color that you had, there's also indent rainbow. That one I've been using for like ever.
Oh, where it shows
It's-
like the different.
Yeah, with different colors, which it makes it so easy to see when you have something super nested.
Yeah.
This is the one that Gerardo was talking about, the indent rainbow. So as you write more and more nested code, it'll show each
Yeah,
indent
I
as
like
different
that.
colors.
Yeah.
So it's easy, so you can easily kind of keep track of, you know, what closing tag belongs or like what it
Yeah,
belongs to
that-
less.
I mean, it's already on the guide, but you know, they should probably have prettier.
Yeah.
In live server.
So prettier probably, so that way you have a formatter. Another nice one is pretty TypeScript errors. So this will help format those TypeScript error messages that you get. And then yeah, the live server, if you're ever doing the vanilla code, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. When we have Vite, you know, Vite has that development server for us with the npm run dev. But if you ever have to open your HTML files, you need to have some sort of a server for those HTML files. So I use an extension called Live Server.
Yeah, that's two.
What was the
Yeah.
one you showed before this?
Before Live Server?
Prettier, right?
Yeah, I think I went over prettier, and then I also went over the pretty TypeScript errors.
Okay.
Yeah, prettier will be the code formatting.
And probably the last one about get lengths, or you said get lengths with get lengths.
Yeah, there's
Is it gonna be applied automatically, right? Everything's gonna be.
yeah, once you install the extension.
It's like I'm trying to move to a different file. I don't know why it's not moving. It says like syntax. So see, I have it now last year.
Yeah.
I want to move to this one. So this.
There's another one, Git Lens. If you install Git Lens, it's kind of a package and installs multiple extensions. The one that Gerardo was just talking about that some people use is Git Blame. Git Blame shows you who wrote the code. So if I go back over here, if I go to this file, you can see down here in my status bar, it says blame Sean Cost. So if you're ever working on a project with someone and then you're like reading code and you're like, who wrote this shit? And then you're like, oh, you can just go look at the blame and you're like, oh, I know who to blame. So people can just use it as a, but it also helps if like, you know, like maybe you don't know who to ask for help or like who wrote the code. By the Git blame, it'll show you who the last person was that like worked on this file. And so it kind of gives you an idea of who wrote the code there. So you could use that as a way to, you know, kind of help you out. That's pretty much about, say, at least the minimum ones that you need. Anyone from there is just kind of as you need or find stuff that you like. Sometimes when I'm bored, I just kind of pull up the marketplace and see if there's anything else that kind of catches my fancy and see if there's anything else I want to add. Any other questions about IUD?
No parentheses.
Okay, and as long as you at least have one installed, set up, good to go. If you ever have any more questions about more customization or anything, there was one weekend I literally watched a 9-hour video on how to customize VS Code, and I went into the nitty gritty of, you know, changing things that I didn't even know you could change and turning off settings I didn't even know existed. So I'm pretty familiar with customizing VS Code. So if you ever need help or have any questions, reach out. Now, the next step is installing a database. Now, so far, out of everywhere, this is going to be probably the biggest part where Mac and Windows are going to divulge. So Mac, we actually have it very easy when it comes to getting Postgres up, which is really nice for us. Windows people, I apologize. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the Mac flow first. So if you're on Mac, follow along. If you're on Windows, just put a pause in it for now. and then Gerardo will walk you through that flow. But Mac people, you can follow along. So go on to the guide, and then if you go right here, it says you can install Postgres. We're going to click on that link. Now, once you get here, you're going to click Mac OS. And now what we want to do is we don't want to install this version. We want to scroll down, and there's going to be another version. And it's going to say Postgres.app. This is the version that we're going to want to install. You're going to go ahead and you're going to click on this link. And it should take you to this website, Postgres app. And it's the easiest way to get started, which it really is. And you should be at this page. So I'll just give everyone a second to get here. Again, this is Mac only. Okay. Once you're here, we have to install it. So you're going to go to downloads, and then there's going to be latest release, and then you'll just hit download. Save the file. Okay. You'll go find it in your downloads. You'll double click. It's going to ask you to do that drag and drop into your applications folder. I already have one, so I'm just going to say stop. I already have it. Okay. Actually, maybe I should have. Start. Let's see. And install mine real quick. Okay. Wait for that to copy. Okay, once that's done, you can go ahead and then open the new app that just got installed, the Postgres app. You may get a little pop-up letting you know that it was downloaded from the internet. You can say open. In mine, it seems like it just kind of carried over the stuff I already have. But I think right here, you should see somewhere there should be an option to say initialize. So somewhere right here, it should say an option to say initialize, and you just want to go and you want to click on initialize. After you do the initialize, you'll hit Control-C to copy this. So it's configure your path to use included. You're going to hit Control-C, you're going to copy this, and then you're going to go to your terminal, and then you're just going to paste in that thing that you just copied. You're going to ask for a password. This is your Mac password. Any problems that anyone ran into?
I had a problem. I lost either the window or I can't find that configure path text.
This should be on your web browser. So if you go on back to your web browser, wherever you were looking at the page, or at least just go back to the open a web browser and go back to the Postgres app.com.
Oh, sorry, it was on the first page. I see it now. Thank you.
Yeah. Now you just got to copy this and then run this in your terminal. Yep, I know. That's something you're going to come to realize that I mean, Windows, you can do just about everything that Matt can do, it's just you're gonna beat your head against your desk getting there.
We don't know, we definitely don't have time to cover this, but if you wanna have the easy experience that's just like what you guys have, WSL2 and having a Linux
Yeah.
distro running on that is absolute, that's how I do everything.
Yeah.
I actually didn't start like learning how to do it outside of it until I came here.
Yeah.
I had to,
Yeah.
but yeah, check that out.
So
WSL2.
the option is don't use Windows, use Linux. Essentially, yeah.
Ron, sorry, I ran into some problem here. I wasn't able to put in my password for some reason. I'm gonna try and run the command again. It took me away from there, and now it has this little key and it's locked. It says
Yeah, you just
password.
type your password. That's all you have to do.
It's not doing.
It doesn't show, it actually is typing, but your characters are, for privacy reasons, they're blank.
Yeah, the terminal won't show you. Yeah. Great. Awesome. Everyone else on Mac good? Okay. Eventually, we'll connect and create a database, but we'll kind of go over that once we set up a full stack project. We will need a way to view our databases, which I recommend a program called Table Plus. So I would download this. It'll be a way for us to eventually view our databases. You can install a different program if you'd like, but I like this one. It's nice, easy. But we'll go over the creating of the databases and viewing them as we set up the project.
Okay, can we use VB-Web2, right?
You would have to install PGWeb on your own. PGWeb is included for you in the LFZ environment, so you're welcome, but you would have to install it on each project you would want.
I think you showed this before, this one's the one that has like a 3-tab limitation,
Yeah.
and that's it, that's the only limitation it has.
Yes, yep, exactly.
That's awesome. And is this available for PC? I don't remember.
Other platforms. Yes, Windows.
Oh, okay, awesome.
You could use this on Windows. The way that Gerardo's probably going to have you install Postgres, I think they have a built-in one,
PG
PG
And
admin.
that's what I use, that's why I haven't installed it, but PG admin is absolute overkill for
Yeah.
most purposes.
Yeah, and PG admin looks like it was straight from like the 90s, and so I don't like the way that
It's
it's like.
still better than Microsoft SQL Server.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the
true.
way it does in this day.
Yeah, yeah. So I like this one because it feels more modern and nice. He did bring up it is technically a free trial version. So the only limitations is that there's only so many tabs I can have open at once. So I can only view, like 2 tables at once. If I try to view more than 2 tables, then it wants me to pay. But I've never really felt hampered by that or anything.
Is it similar to DB diagram?
No, it's similar to PGWeb. It's just a visual way to see your database, your tables, and your data.
Yeah.
But that's it for now. So now we'll have Gerardo jump in and he'll walk through Windows installing and Postgres.
Share my screen. Okay, so for that, we will be going to this page. I'm going to post a link on the chat, and you're going to download. Just go with the most recent version, 17.4. Pick, well, it's really one option. Windows x86 64, unless you have an ancient computer, that's what you need anyway. And go ahead and download that. And
Did you already share the link?
yeah, I showed the link. Let me know if you can try to put it on the right channel.
Oh, yeah, so this
Okay.
one.
So that should start downloading, and then just open up your downloads. And then I'm not going to run the full wizard because last time it took something like 15 minutes, but
Choose the start free, so it's paid.
no, it's not paid. And then what I want to do is it has some options that you do not need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over Noah's shoulder
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just download.
as you do that. So go ahead and open it. Oh, it's not working. You double click it. There you go. Actually, maybe we could share your screen, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I will share my screen and then I'll walk you through it.
I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, give me 1 second, let me stop sharing mine. Okay. Go ahead and share.
They can see my screen.
Yes. So just follow the instructions on the wizards, next. That's the one, you do not need the stack builder, it takes forever to install, make sure you have the command line tool, that's really, really important. As you can see, it does come with pgadmin 4.
Okay,
so-
awesome.
So you can already use that, if you want to install a different one, we have a preferred one, or the one that Sean showed, which looks awesome and modern versus pgadmin. Do that, but I do include it, so I'll leave it optional, but absolutely make sure you have the command line. So know when you're ready, just hit next. Yep, that's 22. And then that's where you're going to create your password.
And this is the password for your Postgres, right?
Yes. And please, this happens to absolutely everybody, they forget. So be very careful with this password, actually write it down and type it in carefully because resetting is kind of a pain. So
Or
yeah, that's the default port and you should keep it as is. I have mine on 5434. That's because I have like multiple instances of Postgres running, one from my WSL, one locally, and then just a bonus from this one. So 5432 is the default. Go ahead and click next.
this is to open the pgadmin, right?
That is the port where it's going to be running the database.
But,
So you know how you have your front end running in one port, your back end in another one in your database. That's the one it's going to be running. 5432 is it.
similar to the 80 when we're on pg wave and open it.
Yes, and you have the colon and then the port number. Yeah. So for this one, select, go ahead and hit next. And then next. And setup is not ready. This is a part that for me took ages. And I didn't want to install, just go through this again. Literally took like 15 minutes.
Wow.
So maybe there's only one more other person on Windows, right? Yeah, this could take a while. We do still have to talk about the path because even though it's supposed to be done by default, it never really is, or it always fails. So I want to make sure they get the path working in the commands. But if you want to talk about or make sure they have their createDB command working on Mac, we can do that.
So it's kind of, so we need to buy Mac.
You don't have to buy
You don't
that.
have to buy Mac.
Okay.
This is, you only have to do this one time.
Yeah.
That's the good news.
But this is anything you can do on a Mac, you can do on a Windows. But this is a perfect example of, I guess, why people, when I say people, I mean me, prefer Mac. It's just because the process of installing and doing these types of things is a lot faster because there's just built-in command line stuff for it. But it's not to say that, oh, that makes Mac, that much easier, better or anything. You can still, it's just Windows is a little bit more of an involved process. But my last job, I did all my development on Windows computer. Then, I do some testing on Mac. It's just, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, then if it switched to Mac.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, sure, but I'm not. Don't go out and spend, thousands of dollars or whatever it is on a new laptop just because you feel like you have to. You can get just as far, with Windows. Okay, so this might take a little bit for Noah.
Go ahead and stop sharing your screen and do let me know
Yeah.
when it's done so we can work on the next step.
So this not true.
All right, now we're gonna kind of tie this in with setting up a full stack project. So let me share my screen again. So on that, I'm not sure if yours was also taking a long time to install PG.
Yeah, so I actually
Okay,
just
good,
got
yeah.
back I was away for a bit.
So yeah, just let it run in the background, and then we'll move on. And then once we get to that step in the post program or the project, we'll kind of
Is it installing already?
What the?
Did he say it was installing?
No, I think
No.
yours,
No, so I just got back. I didn't get to the part where you were installing
Oh, so he
was
hasn't
it Postgres?
installed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw a message that he was away from the keyboard for a minute, so.
okay, do you need Gerardo to walk you through getting that up and going?
Yeah, just sorry, just
Yeah,
for
no
the
problem.
Windows setup.
So I'll do that right now, but you should see the link on the Slack channel. And, and it's gonna take you to this page right here. Go ahead and click the Windows x86 64 and download that. And then once the installer has been downloaded, go ahead and run it. And then after that, maybe you can share your screen and then I can walk you through the process. And it is going to take quite a long time to install. I don't know why it takes so long on Windows, but it does. So just let me know once you have the installer open.
Okay.
Saves a lot.
For you.
Yeah.
Not for us.
Let's see this.
Did you work on setting it up?
I didn't work on setting it up, I had to work on updating it since the guy that created it is no longer here, so, yeah. Reverse engineering how it works essentially.
Yeah. That looks like a nightmare. to
Yeah,
set
it
up, but it
is,
is
yeah.
awesome for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the installer open. Like, is
Okay.
there something specific I need to do? Or instead of just following the instructions, like going next?
Yeah, so well, there's just one thing you don't, what was it called, the stack builder, that you need to uncheck so you don't install that. But other than that, you're gonna wanna go with the default options. At some point, on the installation process, it's gonna ask you for a password. This is going to be your password for the Postgres user, which is a super user. So you need to make sure you don't lose this one because it's kind of a difficult, but not impossible to reset. So just write it down. But other than that, no, you can just go ahead and follow the default installation. And then once you actually get to where it is installing, it takes quite a long time. And that's where Node is still running even after a couple of minutes. So yeah, just go ahead and follow that.
And you said not to check the stack builder?
Yeah, you don't need a stack builder. One of the options it has is the PG admin 4. That's your visualizer. So that is up to you if you want it. I think I just went ahead and installed it. I personally use most of my databases on the terminal, which I know it doesn't look pretty, but that's how I like it. But if you think you prefer to have that as a visualizer, go ahead and install that. The command line tools, which is another option that it's going to ask you, which by the way comes checked by default. You definitely do need that. That one's really important. Yes, you don't need a stack builder, and pgadmin 4 is up to you. And when it asks you about the port number or anything else, the location where it installs, go ahead and go with the default. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, now it's installing.
Is it installing now?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, now that'll take a while, so then we'll start working on setting up the project, and then once we get to the database portion of the project, then we'll check back in on the installation, see that's still going on. Okay, so now we're gonna go over a new guide. So in post program, there's full stack infrastructure. And so now this will go over kind of setting up a full stack project. So we'll go through this guy now. So if you want to pull it up to follow along. Get rid of some of my tabs here.
Did you want to have them create DB, or we'll do that?
We'll do that once we get to the database step. Yeah. Okay. Once we get here, in theory, you've already done this when we did the NPM setup step. We already installed TSX globally, but if you didn't, it helps to have that. As far as full stack projects go, there's a lot of different infrastructures. There's mono repos where everything is all part of the same repository. There's I don't know the word that's a non-mono repo, just a normal repo, I guess. I guess there's sometimes people have a repo specifically for their front end, a repository specifically for the back end. Everyone again likes to organize things differently. Even if you are putting everything inside the same repository, how you create your folder structures is still all opinions, but a standard that we kind of follow and a practice that we recommend is having a client folder for everything in your client, having a database folder for any of your SQL scripts, and then having a server folder for all of your server code. So that's kind of where I recommend at least starting with. So we're going to start setting up a project, but before we set up a project, we should probably create some sort of a destination on our computer where we're going to want to store all of our projects. So what I recommend is like having some sort of directory or folder where you put like all of your projects inside, so that way it's just kind of easy to kind of track them down. So for instance, I have a repos folder. I also have a projects folder. So whatever you want to name it, but I recommend creating some sort of a directory or some sort of a folder that's going to keep all of your different repositories and everything. So name it whatever you want, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up a terminal, command prompt, terminal, PowerShell, Warp, whatever it is. But open up a terminal. Just make sure you're at the root, which you should be by default once it kind of opens up. You're going to do mkdir, so you create a directory, and then create whatever directory you want, whether it's you want to call it projects, whether you want to call it repos, whatever you want to do, but I recommend creating some sort of directory or folder that you're going to be using to store everything.
Shows you how much is full.
Hmm?
This the green thing shows you how much you have space.
No, this green thing is just because I'm using a terminal that doesn't, so it doesn't have all the, it's just gonna have all the styling. Okay. So everyone should have some sort of a folder where they're gonna store everything. I'm gonna create one called projects. Okay. So now I'm inside of my projects directory. Right now I don't have anything, so I just do an ls. We can see that it's empty, but I recommend having somewhere. Now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start creating our full stack project. So there's a couple ways of how we can kind of start this process. You can create the repository on GitHub, and then we can kind of clone it. Or we can create the repository locally, and then we can add it to GitHub. I kind of go back and forth. It kind of depends on the project that I'm building or what repository I'm creating. Generally, I find myself most of the time creating my project on my computer first and then adding it to GitHub as a repository. So that's going to be kind of the flow that we'll go through. But I'm also happy to showcase the other flow as well. So as we're starting a project, let's say we're going to start a new full stack project. The first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to create a new directory for that project. So we'll want to make sure we're inside of our projects folder or whatever folder you created for all of your different repositories. So I'm already inside of it, but just in case you aren't, make sure you cd into your folder. Once inside of here, we'll do an mkdir to create our project. So I'll do mkdir I'm just gonna call this example full stack project, just because I'm showing you just an example. If you already have a full stack project in mind of maybe what you want to build, feel free to call it that. But this is gonna be the name of your repository. So whatever you're gonna want the name of your repo to be, whatever you're gonna want the name of your project to be, since I'm just doing this for demonstration example purposes, I'll just call it that. I'll now cd into it. So now I'm inside of my projects, inside of my example full stack project. Now we're gonna need to do two different commands. Since we're gonna wanna turn this into a Git repository, in order for me to turn it into a Git repository, it has to have a .git file. And the way that we create that .git file is by running git init. So as long as you're inside of your project directory, I'm inside of example full stack project, I'm gonna do git init. I'll get to you in a second, Caroline. And as soon as I hit enter, then you can see it says initialize empty git repository. And you can see it says /projects /example full stack project. Caroline?
I have I have an issue. I seeded into the my portfolio, like new repo or whatever, but it doesn't show projects my portfolio. It just shows it switched to my portfolio.
Your terminal may just only show you the one that you're in.
Oh,
If you do pwd, it'll show you the whole path.
EW. Oh, PW. Okay, thank you.
If you do pwd, it should show you the whole path, and then it should show you if you're in, /projects / whatever it is. Yeah.
Sean, can I answer this question?
Huh?
It's like a common question. So whenever we create anything on Git bash, it's gonna be reflected on everything on the device, right?
Whenever you create anything,
Like globally, it's gonna be similar to the shell, PowerShell.
you're saying like if you create a folder or anything?
Yeah, create a folder,
Yeah.
it's gonna be reflected everywhere. Git bash or PowerShell.
Yeah. All you're doing is, so for instance, like on Mac, right? On Windows you have a file explorer. On Mac, I have a Finder, right? So all we're doing is this is a GUI. So Mac has a Finder, Windows has a file explorer. So when I go inside my Mac Finder and when I create something new, wherever I can create something new folder. So when I do new folder, under the hood, Mac is just doing an mkdir. Windows is just doing an mkdir. So we're just doing the natural behavior that these GUIs are already doing. So it's just, we're not using the GUI, we're just executing them directly via the terminal.
Yeah, just want to make sure that Git bash is.
Yeah, that's why, Git bash will reflect because you're interacting directly with your computer.
Oh, okay.
Okay, close back out of this. Close back out of this. Any other questions so far? Okay, so we ran git init, so now our project was initialized as a Git repository. Now, in order to use npm and start installing npm packages, we have to do npm init. So now we're going to do npm init. So if you just do npm init on its own, I forgot about this, it makes it interactive. And then it's going to ask you step by step what you want to do for each thing. If you hit Control-C, it'll cancel the interactive and it'll exit it out. If you redo the same command, but if you do -y, then it's going to do the defaults for all the different npm init steps. So if you don't want to have to go, step by step and fill out each one, you can just do npm init -y, and then it'll use the defaults. But if you wanted to, you can still do the npm init, and then you can, go through each step and and put all the stuff you wanted to. But we just need to at least do npm init, so that way we have a package.json.
So in this command, we created the package.json.
Yes, when we do npm init, all it does is create a package.json.
And this allows us to install any npm future.
Correct. Yep.
Sean?
Caroline?
Yes, I was wondering, so this, would you recommend the npm init -y just as a good start? And then we can just go in and install the packages, so.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, you can,
fastest.
you can edit your package.json at any time. So if you wanted to go change the name of your, it says example full stack project, you can still go change that. So I just do -y just so I get it up and going at the default. And then if I ever need to change anything, I just go back and change it.
So,
Thank you.
and if you want to check what we have created,
In the package.json?
yeah, like here we are at the terminal, we cannot see, okay, it's what's created.
You can. Well, if you do an ls, you can see that the file's there. So now we know that it exists. And if you utilize the command line basics, we can do cat package.json, and it'll print out the contents of the file,
Yeah.
utilizing what we learned.
John,
Yeah.
I was wondering for the, you have that ghosty terminal. What is the difference between downloading the universal binary and the package manager? You know by any chance? Oh, no worries. I was.
I assume this is via Homebrew. Yeah. This would have, this is like installing the exe, like the actual file itself. Homebrew, you know how we use npm to install npm packages? Homebrew is like a package manager for Mac. So you can install applications for your computer via package manager. So it's kind of like an npm for your computer. So for you, if you were going to do this one, you would do the universal binary. But I will give you a warning. If you download Ghosty, it's not going to look like mine. Like Ghosty isn't what makes it look like this.
Oh, I've noticed.
Okay, I was just making sure. Like what makes it look like this is my custom config, which I'm happy to share. But Ghosty is just
Okay.
actual program itself.
There's no Windows, Mac OS.
No, not for Ghosty. But I would recommend using Warp. I think Warp is Warp's a nice one. Okay, so now we've done both git init, we've done a npm init. Now let me go back to our project here. So now, I didn't have everyone install that command, which they should have done. Go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. And once you open Visual Studio Code, I believe Windows, it'll be Control-Shift-P. On Mac, it's Command-Shift-P. You're going to open up this little menu, and you're going to type in install code, and you're going to see an option right here, and it says shell command, install code command, and path. Go ahead and click on that option. Install code command in path.
You should probably already work just to test it.
So code.
So do you have your terminal?
Yes. Yeah.
And okay, just type code.
Sorry, what was that shortcut again, Sean? It's not the.
Yeah,
The
on
Open up Visual Studio
Code. Command Shift P.
Code dot opens or whatever.
And then install code.
On VS Code.
Why are we doing this?
I'm going to show you. Okay. So now after you've done that, what that's going to allow you to do, you may have to restart your terminal since we just installed it. But now you can see in my terminal, I'm in /example full stack project. And now in my terminal, I'm going to do code space dot. As soon as I hit enter, it's going to open this project inside of VS Code for me. And so that's why we did that repack. So now it's easy to open our projects in VS Code because now you're going to be doing a lot of your navigating via the terminal. So just an easy way to open your project inside of VS Code since you're going to be in the terminal is via that code.
I mean, go add cursor, right?
Huh?
How do we add cursor?
This is code.
And
Okay.
this that was just a one-time thing because I mean, then whatever folder we'll be in, we just do code dot and it would take us to that. It would open in VS Code.
Yeah, just a one-time thing. Yep. Yep. If anyone, cursor does have the same thing, but it's cursor. So now I can do cursor dot. You can see it opens in cursor too. So if anyone was going to go the route of using cursor, cursor does have their own version too, and you would use it. Okay. Any questions about that? We're good so far? Okay. So open your project in VS Code. So do that code dot. So that way you now see your project in VS Code. You should see your package.json. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a git ignore file. So now the easiest way to create files is we have a couple different ways. In VS Code, you can click on this little icon up here. It's that little paper with a plus. And if you hover over it, you can see it says new file. You can click on that, and then you can just type in the name of the file that you want to do. So you can say git ignore. You could also use touch. So we could also open up a terminal, and then I could say touch.gitignore, and I could create my file that way. But we want to create a git ignore file. And what we want to do with this file is we want to tell Git all the things that we don't want it to include in any of our commits. So we'll go back to that guide, and we're going to copy these. And we'll paste them in this git ignore file. So now everything that's listed in this git ignore file, anytime you ever do a git status, it's never going to show up as like a change. And it's good because it's going to allow you or prevent you from accidentally adding it to GitHub. So for something like your env file, right? Your env file is going to have all of your environment variables. So it's going to have your API keys, any sensitive information. So we wouldn't want to add that to GitHub because then they could get compromised. So by adding it to our git ignore, then Git is always going to ignore them, and they'll make sure that it'll never get included in any commits or any push that you ever actually push to GitHub. So you can use this as kind of a default whenever you start a project. Node modules, this is where all of our NPM packages live. So we don't want to include those because then our project would get quite lengthy because now we have all the code for our project and all the code for our dependencies, all the code for their dependencies. They can already find that information from the package.json. So we don't need to include the node modules.
If you forget that one, you probably won't be able to push it off.
Yeah, if you forget that one, VS Code's going to get mad at you because then you're going to be like, you have like 24,000 active changes, and then your computer's going to freeze up and then it's going to think it's like an infinite loop or something. So node modules is something that will always be there.
You're going to put it in the git ignore.
Yeah, but from what we,
From the
You
guide.
create the git ignore.
yeah, created it.
So now the DS store, this is I think this is a Mac specific thing. I don't fully know how it works. I think sometimes Mac creates these as like Mac customization files. So I've only seen them on Mac. So we just put them there because they don't really have any purpose. VS Code. So another way of customizing VS Code settings is by like a .VS Code kind of folder, and then there's like a settings file inside. So we just don't include those because any VS Code configs are individualized and customized to us, so we won't include them. This is usually where your build files live. So you're saying you're not going to include any of your built JavaScript files. Any logs. So if you had any air log files, you're not going to include them. Any zips. So that way, if you had maybe a zip of images that you were working with, it's going to make sure you don't include any of that. And obviously, you can always add on to this too. So if you want to make sure that nothing gets included, there's nothing stopping you from going ahead and adding stuff on your own. So for instance, if let's say I did an index.html, right? If I go to the Git changes, you can see Git sees it as an active change because it didn't exist before and now it does exist. But if I go to my git ignore, and if I now put index.html inside my git ignore, now over here, you can see it doesn't show it as an active change. Git ignores it because now it belongs to the ignore file. So now Git is never going to include it in any sort of our commits or anything. So you can use that as a starting point, and if you need to ignore stuff on your own, then you could add that over time. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create the client directory. So the structure we're going to go with is we're going to go with client, database, and server. So all of the code for our React app is going to live inside the client directory. So that's what we're going to create. So we're going to create a Vite app. We're going to call that app client, which will create the client directory for us. And then since we want to use TypeScript, we'll make sure to set that template to React.ts. So I'm just going to copy this. Open up my terminal. I'm now going to paste that. Okay. And now you'll have a client directory. It'll have all of that default boilerplate that Vite provides for the React application. We'll want to make sure that we install those dependencies. So we're going to cd into our client. We're going to do npm install.
Install the following packages. Create the client tools, the whole thing. Source, public.
Yep.
Then we can get the same icon like LZ.
You mean for those like those icons up there?
What
Yeah,
is this one?
it's an extension. So it's called VS Code icons. VS Code icons. So it's just an extension. VS Code icons, and then just like how you would set a theme, you can file icon theme, and you could choose which icon theme you want to do.
How do you choose it? VS Code icon.
Once you install the package, you'll go Command-Shift-P, and you'll type in our icon theme, and it says preferences file icon theme.
Yeah, we have it already applied.
Yep.
I have an LFZ now.
There you go. Okay, so now we have our clients directory. Now, next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create the database directory. So I'm going to cd back because I went into my client to install those dependencies. So I'm going to do cd dot. So that way I'm at the root of my repository. So now I'm at /example full stack project. Now we want to create our database. So I'm going to create our database directory. So I'm going to say, oh, not touch because it's not a file. Sorry, it's a directory. So I'm going to say mkdir database. And now over here, I have a client directory, and I also have a database directory. Our database is going to have a schema file, and it's going to have a data file. So we'll also touch to create those. So I'm going to say database schema.sql, and then database data.sql. So now we'll create both of those files. So now we should have a client directory with the Vite boilerplate, and then we should have the database directory with a data.sql file and a schema.sql file.
Kind of lost you here. So when I created the example full stack project, I did the command, the feed one, and then so do I need to do anything else or just skip? And I don't have the database.
Yeah, that's what we just did.
I need the database folder.
Yep.
Yeah. Make sure you cd out of client if you're in there.
No, I'm not the client, so see and create the.
Yep. Now do the mkdir database. And now inside of there, create the schema.sql and data.sql.
The whole.
Everyone else good so far?
We need to go back to to the different folder, right? The one with the database. This one.
You already have,
Yeah.
or you're up, you're caught up right now, so you can just keep following up. Yeah, you have me right.
Hey, Sean?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you will be able to share with me your the ghosty
And then
that you have.
Yeah,
'cause
that's what I
you-
was saying is that it has nothing to do with Ghosty and it has to do with ZSH. So that's,
Oh,
it has nothing to do with Ghosty. You could use any terminal and you would still get my same thing. It has to do with the actual config. But we'll do a one-on-one session and then I can take it up.
oh, super. Thank you.
So you have the database. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, it's something.
so you, this command, where you
So I
touch, if you do this, right directory, are also directory.
So now I'm here, right, at the current directory. So
Yeah.
at the root. So now,
You can run them.
so now I can do the search, right?
Yeah.
It's actually,
Wait for Noah to get caught up and then we'll move on.
okay, so I have an empty database. Thank you guys for it.
Okay. Now, so we have a client directory, we have a database directory. Inside of that database directory, it has a data.sql and a schema.sql. Empty, but we at least have those files. Now we want to create a server directory for all of our backend code. So now back in my terminal, I'm at the root of my repository in my project. So /example full stack project. mkdir to create our directory. And then we want to create a server directory. mkdir server. And now you have a server directory. That'll be it for now. Now the next thing we're gonna want to do is we're gonna have our client, our front end, and then we're gonna have our server, which is our backend. And they each have their own development server. Vite has its own development server, and then our backend Express, we also need to run that server. So we have both servers, and we need to run them at the same time. We have to run them in parallel. So in our guide, it has this npm install --save--dev. And you can see it's installing an npm package called npm run all. And what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to execute npm scripts for both our client and our server at the same time. So since I'm going to have to start the dev for my client and start the dev for my server, we want to run them at that same time with npm run all. So we're going to want to make sure that we install this. So copy this command, and we want to make sure that we run this at the root of our project. So we have 3 different places where we can install npm packages. We have the root of our project, we have the client directory, and then we have the server directory. You want to make sure that you install it based off of where that package is being used. In our case, npm run all is running both our client scripts and our server scripts. So it has to live at the root of our project because it impacts both my front end and my back end.
So I mean, the root is the name of the project.
Yes.
example, full stack.
Exactly, yeah. If I was installing an npm package like React Router, for instance, well, React Router only matters in the context of React. So I would only install that package in my client directory. So that way that npm package is only associated with my client. So based off of where that package is being used, you need to make sure that you install it in the right location. In our case, we want npm run all to be used at the root of our project, our whole repo. So we want to make sure that we run it there. So we're going to do npm install --save--dev because we want it as a dev dependency. and then the package that we want, which is npm run all. So we'll hit enter. Now you should see in your package.json at the root of your folder or your directory, you now have a new property called dev dependencies. And inside of dev dependencies, you now have an npm run all package listed as a dependency.
You don't have what?
You have it right there. You keep saying you have things and you have them right there.
They just came in from nothing.
Well, what the command does, it added it for you.
Yeah, there. Okay, so now we installed our dependency. Now we want some handy dandy scripts to help us do all the various different things that we need to do. To go ahead and copy this scripts object. And now in your package.json at the root, you're gonna replace this scripts object with the one you just copied. And you may need to add a comma after the object for the scripts right here. Should look like this. Talk about each one in a second. The what?
That runs the code, but that's not for this. That's like if you were doing another language like Python, C#. You don't need to put that. Well, I guess TypeScript, but it's like a JSON file, so I'm not quite sure what it's saying.
Yeah, I'm just going to the right side. Okay, so just to kind of quickly go over these scripts, this db import, this is going to help you to easily set up your database. Since we're going to have a data.sql and a schema.sql, so that way you don't have to manually keep executing both of those files with pSQL. We created a shell file that'll do it for you, which we'll get to later on. So that script will just make it so that if you ever need to create your database and seed your database, you have a script that'll do it for you in one. This script will only start the dev server for the client. So you can see dev :client. You can see npm run dev -- prefix client. So this is saying, hey, I want to run the dev script only in the folder that is prefixed with a client. So now it's going to look inside of that client directory, and it's going to find the npm run dev command that belongs inside of that client directory. This command does the same thing, but for the server. So if you only wanted to start the dev server, then you could do npm run dev :server. If we just do dev, then you can see it utilizes that package that we just installed, npm run all. So it's going to utilize npm run all. It's going to run them in parallel, so it runs them at the same time, and it's going to run everything that has that dev. So now it's going to look inside both our client and both of our servers, and it's going to run that npm run dev script that belongs inside. That's why on your final project, for instance, you probably just always ran npm run dev, and it started up your backend and it started up your front end at the same time. That's what this is doing. Under the hood, what it's doing is it's just running the npm run dev script that existed in your server directory and the npm run dev script that existed in your client directory. But it's just doing them at the same time for you, so you don't have to go into all individual.
Also, so instead of doing npm run dev, we just do npm run all. It's gonna be running.
No. You still do npm run dev. It's executing the individual scripts inside your client or inside your server.
Yeah, and you need these scripts for it to work out. That's why he's explaining what each command does, but you're still going to do it like that to run it long.
We have install client. So this will install only the dependencies for your client. So you can see npm install -- prefix client. So if you ever just wanted to only run npm install on your client directory, then you could do the install client script. same thing, but for the server. This one is if you want to install both. So you can see npm run all -- parallel install. So this will execute npm install for both your client and your server. This one gets ran automatically for you on your deployment whenever you had your deployment action set up. So that's kind of why that one lived there. This is for TSC, so the TypeScript compiler. So on the junior side, we use the TypeScript compiler to actually create JavaScript files. But you can use TSC to check for TypeScript errors. You don't have to just use TSC to actually like compile files. You can use it as like a linter so that you can actually, you know how you have ESLint errors, but you also have like actual TS errors, how it'll say like TS. So TSC will essentially run through all of your files and it'll check all those TypeScript errors and then it'll show you any TypeScript errors that you have in your project. So we have, if you wanted to run that only on the client, or if you wanted to run that only on the server, or if you wanted to run that on both. Any questions about any of that?
I'm gonna test all these commands.
You can play around with them on your own.
So,
They all do what I told you they do.
yeah, for example, like the
Uh-huh.
last one for the test there, we're gonna do npm -run -o
No.
-esc.
This is what you say npm run this.
Oh, the
It will do that. So
Yeah.
I only need to do npm run install client or like this. It's hard looking up there and trying to type it. So if I run this, it's going to execute this script in my package.json, which means it's going to run this for me automatically. So all you do is you just write npm run and then the name of the script, which is going to be right here.
We're just typing the key, sticking the button.
There is a little note here about Windows. Some versions of npm on Git Bash don't support the prefix option. So you can see in some of these scripts, -- prefix client, -- prefix server. So if anyone on Windows is running into any issues with any of these scripts, change the prefix to CD client or CD server respectively, and then it should fix it. So just something for Windows users in case you come across it.
If they're on latest, it should be fine. They work.
It should be good. Okay, so any questions so far before we move on? Okay, now the next thing we're going to want to do, since we're going to be setting up a full stack project, I have forgotten this so many times and I have spent so much time wondering why my requests are not working. You have to update your Vite config. Since we're going to have a backend server and we're going to be making requests from our own client to our own backend, we need to tell Vite about it. So I'll just copy this, but you're going to go into your client directory, find your viteconfig.ts. Oh, and then right here after plugins, you're going to paste in that little snippet that we just copied from the guide. So right after plugins. So what this is going to tell Vite is it's going to add a proxy for your server. So now if I make a fetch call to anything that starts with /API, Vite is going to automatically reroute that request to localhost 8080. So this is how Vite essentially knows to utilize our actual local backend rather than trying to look for that actual URL resource on the web to make the request to.
We need to install it because it's
Nope.
gonna find the module.
Nope.
Yeah, it's just gonna find the module.
Oh, that's because you haven't installed.
You haven't ran into it.
Yeah, you haven't installed inside your client or with the commands. Yeah.
So just do it again.
So CD into your client and then do npm install.
Oh, you can. There's also the proxy for the images.
So which one?
For images, if they're hosting files from their backend, They can also add that on there. I know Kaya and I had like a really hard time figuring it
Oh,
out.
really?
I was setting up cores for her, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, why isn't it working?
And
We
you
didn't
needed
have a
that.
proxy. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. I have not experienced that yet, but I guess if you're ever gonna do any sort of image upload management, then you also have to add a proxy for that. Okay. So now we installed this in R for what we used at LearningFuze is all of your routes were prefixed with /API. That was just a convention we chose. If you change it, just make sure you also update this respectively. Also, if you ever change your ports, so by default we use port 8080. If you ever change your port, you need to make sure that you also go and update your proxy for your deconfig and update it there as well. Okay, what we're also going to want to probably install is we're going to want to install some sort of routing library since you're probably going to want to have a multi-page React app. So here's where I'm kind of mentioning you want to make sure you install the packages in the correct folder for them. So in our case, React Router only matters in our client. I don't use React Router on the server. It's only ever going to be used inside the client, so it makes sense to install that inside of our client directory. So I'm going to cd into our client, and then now I'm going to install React Router DOM. So npm install React Router DOM. Okay. Now that installed React Router DOM, the way that we can double check is if we go to the package.json inside of the client directory, so inside of client package.json, then you can see dependencies, React Router DOM. There it is. Give everyone a second to get here.
Find the stuff, copy paste them. Check it on the package.json.
Yeah, in the client. Yep. Good. This is the client. This is your
Oh, so here, the client.
Yep. React Router DOM.
Did you install it on the root?
No, he installed it. He was just looking at the wrong one.
Okay, so make sure you don't install the root.
Well, if we install it on the root, it's gonna be the same thing.
No, it's not going to be the same thing because the root is the root. It's not going to be used by React. That's why you have to make sure you install it in the correct directory. Okay. Any other problems before we move on? Okay. Now the next step would go over Tailwind. Tailwind has since changed. So there are now two versions of Tailwind. You have pre-version 4, so 3 and before, and you have version 4 and later. These steps down here are for version 3 and earlier. So the current version of Tailwind, if you were to go install Tailwind, is version 4. So these steps are not going to be for that. I will walk us through how to install Tailwind version 4 right now. The only way that you'll have these steps is the recording. I'll go and I'll update this guide. So I'll update this, but just know for now, if you look at this guide before I do update it, this is going to be for version 3 and earlier. This isn't going to be for the current version of Tailwind. So I'll walk us through how to install the current version of Tailwind. I'll go to the Tailwind docs. Once we go to the docs, there's the installation. It's going to ask us how we want to install it. We're going to be using Vite, so we're going to install it via Vite. Now, the first thing it wants us to do is it wants us to install a couple NPM packages. So I'm just going to copy this, and it's going to install Tailwind CSS, and it's also going to install Tailwind CSS, but a Vite package. So I'm gonna copy this. And since this is Tailwind, where do we want to install this?
Client side.
On the client side. This has nothing to do with our server. It has everything to do with our styling. So we want to make sure that we install this in our client directory. So now make sure you do your npm install inside of your client, and we'll do install Tailwind CSS and then at Tailwind CSS beat. It may take a second to go and do that.
Well, we need to use like a certain like keywords for the class's name. We need to follow the guy class name.
If you were to use Tailwind, yeah. And you don't have to use Tailwind. You know, if you want to write all your CSS vanilla, totally fine too. I'm just showcasing how you would set up Tailwind, but totally up to you. You don't have to use it at all, for sure. Okay. After we've done the npm install command, we have to go update our vite config. So we're going to go to our vite config.ts. We have to import Tailwind. So I'm going to say import Tailwind CSS. So import Tailwind CSS from at Tailwind CSS/vite. And now inside of this plugins array on line 7, after React, I want to do comma, and I want to say Tailwind CSS, and then I want to call it like so. So now you went to your vite config, you added an import statement for Tailwind CSS, where you imported it from at Tailwind CSS/vite, and then in your plugins, you also now called that package that you imported and added it to your plugins array. All good? Okay. Now the last thing we would need to do is we need to actually add an import to our CSS file. So I'm going to copy this. And then you're going to go to your client's index.css. Going to delete all this boilerplate. And I'm just going to add that. So I deleted all my boilerplate from index.css. And all I did was do at import and then Tailwind CSS. And now in theory, we should have working Tailwind. So just as a way to test, I'm going to go to my app. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to create an H2. I'm going to give it a class name of text to Excel, text underline, or maybe it's just underline, and then font bold. I am using Tailwind. Okay, so we added the import Tailwind CSS to index.css. Now inside of my app.tsx, I just created an H2 and I gave it some Tailwind classes. So I gave it a text to Excel, underline, and a font bold. And now inside my terminal, I'm still inside of client. I'm going to run npm run dev. And I'm not sure if you've seen this trick yet, but if you hit O and if you hit enter, then it's going to automatically open that vite in your browser. Now it's going to open. And if we check it out, we can see we're now using Tailwind. So now you can see all the styles are being applied by the Tailwind classes. So text to Excel, you can see it has that font size. My underline, you can see it has that underline, and it has that font bold. So that's how you'll set up Tailwind. If you want to, again, you don't have to use Tailwind, but if you wanted to set up Tailwind, that would be how you would set up version 4. And if you ever needed to do one of the older versions, that's where these steps would have come into play. But yeah, you have to call it in plugins. Yeah, inside the array. Comma, and then Tailwind. Call it.
Oh, cool.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to the server?
All the setup only in the client side.
So Sean, I had to do it differently when I was doing it for my full stack project. And I see bits and pieces of the code that's given here in the documentation that I had used in my files. And I also had to create like a Tailwind config file. I don't know what I was doing wrong that it didn't work using those steps, because I used the documentation, the Tailwind documentation to do it, but it didn't work for me. And that is why then I think I met like an instructor and I sat with him and I did the whole process and I got it working. But I mean, if you have time later on and we can do a one-on-one and you can check out my file and let me know.
Yeah, we can take a look. Yeah, in theory, the way that I just showed should work. As long as you set it up that way, in theory, you shouldn't need a Tailwind config at all. Where things get tricky is if you're using dependencies that are using like have Tailwind as a dependency. So for instance, if I was using a component library that was using Tailwind, if that component library was built on top of Tailwind version 3, well, then I have to kind of be set up for Tailwind version 3. Otherwise, the package I'm using is going to be outdated. So just off of a quick overview, what could have happened was maybe one of your npm packages wanted you to use version 3, so that's why you had to add a config. But yeah, we could take a look.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to the server? Okay. So the next thing is that we're going to set up kind of all of our default files for the that we would want for the server. The best way to do that is to copy a lot of your code from the full stack intro exercise, because we're going to want the ts config, that package.json, the entire lib folder. So what I can do is I can try to zip that up real quick so that I can send that out to everyone again. So go ahead, unzip all those files, and then put them all inside of here.
Oh, I can see the rainbow thing too.
Once you're done with that, I would go to, you can leave this. Replace this. So the server.ts that I sent you, it was from the actual to-dos exercise. So we don't need a lot of these routes with these posts and these gets. So back in the guide, we can just copy this if we want, and this is pretty much all we want our server. We're getting some errors, and that's just because we haven't ran npm install yet. So if we open up our terminal, and if we go to our server directory, so now example full stack project/server, we did npm install. It'll install all the dependencies, which will fix all of those errors.
Oh, it already comes with.
Yeah, I just copied over that solution that we had, so it already had a whole bunch of boilerplate. You can get rid of it. All we really want is we just want one endpoint so that we can test, and then it has all of our PG pool and express JSON and all that.
You're supposed to just run npm install, or
What's up, Caroline?
are we supposed to only just run npm install?
Yeah, in your server. So make sure you go into your server folder and then run npm install.
Something happened with the naming of my. Okay, never mind. Thank you. I'll be.
the terminal.
Any other problems, issues that anyone's having?
Yeah, I'm having some problems here because I copied the whole unzipped folder into my VS Code, but this VS Code looks a bit different than I'm used to with the paths and
Probably
stuff.
dropped it in the wrong spot. You have to make sure you drop it specifically in the server directory.
I see.
Yeah, so I would close out of VS Code, reopen VS Code in your project. So, redo the code dot thing, and then make sure you drag it and drop it only in the server directory.
We do have to install on the server.
If you put it in the wrong spot, you probably want to remove the old one too, right?
Well, I don't think it'll, I think it created a new workspace, but we'll see.
Okay, awesome. Now we have a simple endpoint saying hello world.
For the database URL, do you keep it as dev for the user? I find that just creates more problems.
No. No, that'll change. Mac or Windows by default, it's Postgres, I think, right?
Is it now for Mac? It is for Windows, yeah.
Yeah, it is for Mac.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the super user that
Mhm.
comes out of the box. And then it creates one for the user, so mine's Gerardo.
Yeah.
That works too, but
I
find
usually
it's
just have
using
them use Postgres.
Postgres.
Yeah. Easy. Caroline, were you able to fix it? You're still having issues.
Yeah, I think I'm still in the wrong. Can I share my screen really quick?
Yeah.
Did you copy the entire folder, Caroline?
I did.
Yeah, I did that too, but I think you should just delete that and like copy the contents of the folder.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
opening your whole, okay, close out of this. Close out of VS Code.
Oh,
Shoot.
Yeah, you keep open, you're opening your whole desktop in VS Code. Go to your terminal.
I added my whole desktop to a GitHub repo next.
Really? Jeez.
It was really mad at me.
Okay, CD, no. You need a CD into your projects folder, whatever projects folder you created. Okay, now do an LS. Okay, now CD into that. Now do code dot.
oh. Thank you.
Now open up your server directory. Well, I don't know if you were fixed.
Oh, sorry.
So open up. Yeah, you have a double server. You see how you have server. So I would
I'll just do what Rukaya mentioned. It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other problems before we move on? We are technically supposed to wrap up in 15 minutes. I don't know if we'll be able to reach it. So it'll either be we have to stop in 19 minutes and pick it up on the next session, or we have to speed it up. So next thing we need to do is we need to create a .env. So we have a .env.example, but we need a .env file. So a quick way is we want all of the contents of this env.example. So in your terminal, go to the server directory. So make sure you're in /server or cd into it if you're not. And from here we can do cp. So what do we want to copy? I want to copy my .env.example. And then where do I want to copy it to? I want to copy it to .env. Now when I hit enter, you can see over here, it created a .env file for me, and it just took all of the contents of .env.example, and it created the .env with it.
CP will not work on PowerShell.
Okay, so CP will not work on PowerShell, if Gerardo's saying. So for Windows, it may be easier to just create the file manually and just go and copy and paste.
But you have a data example.
Yeah, and you need an .env.
Yeah,
Sean,
okay.
I don't see an env example file.
Did you copy it from the zip file I gave you?
I had the same problem. I didn't see the env file. That's why,
Fine.
yeah.
It should be there. If you open up full stack intro, you can see .env.example is right up here at the top.
There are only 5 items in it. One's the folder, the lib, and then package log.json, package JSON server, and tsconfig
It
JSON.
only showed up when I moved the whole folder. I tried both ways.
On your Explorer, dot or extensions that end with dot are
Oh.
hidden files.
Yeah, you won't see hidden files by default on Mac. You have to enable them.
Yeah.
So you have to
Same with Windows.
so open Finder and then do Command Shift period. So if you open up open up the folder and then hit Command Shift period, and you can see it's going to toggle. Oh, there we go. Now it'll toggle it from showing and unshowing. And I think Gerardo was saying the same thing for Windows. Windows by default, you won't see any files that begin with a period, so you may have to enable some sort of a setting to allow you to see it.
If you're in the Explorer, just click on View. It's one of your tabs at the top, and then the last option is Show, and then you just make sure the check mark is on hidden items. That's it.
Yeah, it goes.
Exactly like that.
So if you're right here, the 3 dots, options, and then view, and then there's a setting right here that says show.
I think that's for an older version. You scroll up, it has the latest one. Right? That's the easy one, right?
This one right here?
Yeah, so
Oh,
just-
okay, right here.
If you just go on View, then Show, then hidden items. That's
Oh, right here, yeah.
a little bit
So this is Windows 11.
Yeah.
So, yeah. View, show, and
What
down
are you
here.
guys trying to see? Like, looking through the two-
What was the terminal command that you told us to do, Sean, to copy the file?
Copy the files is CP. This one right here.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Just switch. So that's the point of the user. The one. So just want to get something that's gonna. So do you use it that? Yeah. Or I can have to try. Has to be async before they use try.
It doesn't have to be async for use try, but you also don't need try. It's not there.
Any other questions about this?
We all like use.
Yeah, and make sure you fetch.
Okay. Ahmed Noah, is your installer still running for Postgres or did that finish?
I'm just following you from long time.
It's finished?
Yeah.
Mine finished as well.
So you already finished that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Can you do it on your computer and?
want to share?
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So now we're gonna start creating the database. We're gonna do Windows first. So Ahmed, we're gonna have Noah share his screen. So just follow along with Noah.
So first, we're gonna test and see if it actually installed properly. Hopefully, fingers crossed. It hardly ever does. So open up a terminal. No, well, yeah, I guess you can do that. And do create DB.
Has to be in the server or just go back to?
It doesn't matter. It's not gonna be done anymore. Create DB. And then hit enter. Okay, batch create DB command not found. So this is what I expected. It means that we don't have your path here, so we're gonna do that right now.
So I need a copy of the other.
When you do create DB without the name of the database, you create one for the user that you currently are on. So you don't have to have that, but it doesn't matter because either way, from that response, we see that the path is not taken properly. So next, open Windows.
Hold up. But Ahmed, do you also see the same thing if you try to do create DB? Do you say create DB command not found?
I'm actually a few steps behind, so I'm just like kind of tagging along as you guys go through these, and I plan to go back uh and rewatch because I did like I was working on something else and I kind of fell behind a little bit, so I'm not really.
In theory, you don't really have to be caught up. You should be able to do it inside of any terminal.
Yeah,
So
so long as the installer finished, right?
yeah, as long as the installer is finished. So I would
Yeah.
check it now, just before we move on, and then you could get caught up on everything else. But just open up a terminal and see if it'll at least let you do create DB on its own.
And I can do this in PowerShell.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can do it in PowerShell. Yeah. And let me know what happened once you run it.
Yeah, it looks like I'm also getting the same error.
You got
Command
the
not
same
found.
error, command not found?
Yep.
Okay, so then you're gonna want to follow along with what Gerardo is about to show.
Awesome. So Noah, could you please open our Windows? So Windows E, and then start typing ENV, and then you should see that edit system environment variables. Click on that. Okay, next you should click on the environment variables. That's the button towards the bottom right there. Okay, and then you're gonna see two options, user variables and system variables. On system variables, yeah, you see two. Okay. You're gonna scroll down and you're gonna look for path. Yeah, so here's mine. On yours. There you go. I see it. Okay, then you're gonna click it. Just single click. You know, oh well, there you go. Actually, I guess double click. So next you want to click on new. Okay, and then actually click on browse so we can navigate to it. So if you install it in the default location, it should be under program files, which is inside of this PC, unless you have your computer set up differently. Go to below.
Scroll down though a little bit.
I saw it below.
Right there.
This PC, and then you're gonna go and see. Then look for program files. I'm sorry. Yeah, program files. Program files, and then go look for Postgres.
No, Postgres.
Postgres, you're on Cisco. You need to go back one.
I'm trying to use.
Okay. So just minimize Cisco. And then it should be alphabetical, so just
ABC.
there it is. So open that one. And you weren't done yet. I think you hit enter and stop it. So click on yeah. But actually browse on the one that you just created to finish it up. Close this.
Yeah, it's already created. There's a program file.
Yeah, but you created it before it was done. So double click on that one. And then go to browse. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna make it start at the beginning. So this PC.
No, just go to browse.
Yeah.
This PC.
This PC, and then C, then program files, and then Postgres. And don't hit enter until I tell you, please. There you go, open that, and then scroll down a little bit. Then 17, yeah, okay, it's already open, and then bin. Okay, now you can click OK. Okay, so there you go. Now,
I'll look real quick on that. Yours should look just like that too. So the path C, program files, PostgreSQL 17 bin. You see that most recent thing that they added down there. Awesome.
and if you install it with the default conditions, it should look exactly like that. But I just wanted to use the browse because I don't know how this folder structure is set up. Okay, So once you've added that, you can click OK. And then click OK here too. And then next you're gonna, again,
Okay,
and then open up, we want to use a different terminal, so use, because this one has to be restarted, so just open up Git bash. We want to test it on Git bash or PowerShell. Okay. Are you using Git bash? Just do create DB. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. You need to restart. So
I think you just
it's
close.
not, it's
yeah, close your VS Code.
not committed, right?
That's fine.
There we go.
You could just open a Git bash instance from Windows.
Yeah.
That's much easier.
Okay, you want to do it again?
Yeah, create DB. Okay, so there you go. Now that's the password I told you not to forget.
I forgot. Why not see?
That's what, so it hides your input for privacy reasons, so it is typing, it is not showing in the care.
Ed, did it work for you now too?
Okay, so,
I have it.
So
I'll-
it looks
I'll,
like it's working, but like it doesn't say password. It's just like I didn't get any response after typing create DB, but it looks
It was
like
just, you just got empty,
Yeah.
thing back.
like an empty like cursor
Did you do it in PowerShell or,
in Git bash.
in Git bash?
you should be fine because the first time it creates the DB for user, right? So
Yeah.
run it again, and you should get an error, and this is actually a good thing. Hold on. It's because of the user.
So if you run it again, do you get an error? It's the second time saying that it won't work?
But it already exists.
Yeah, there-
Um, no, it's doing the same thing still. It's
There's
it's
no
just like
feedback?
yeah, no feedback, just the cursor.
I guess we'll try, see.
That happened last time, and what it was a buggy installation.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that sucks, because it takes so long.
Yeah.
Well, just for the recording, let's finish now since his is working.
Yeah.
So, on the guide, it tells you to export your user, but right now, by default, it's trying to log in under your user, not the default user, which is Postgres. So for that, you can do, just to test it, yours does work, but you can do, PSQL,
So just do C, PC,
PSQL,
PSQL.
and then you can do space, dash, capital U, and then space, and then Postgres.
Postgres SQL.
No, just like that. That's the name of the user. And then now put the password that you created earlier.
So I change it from being the user to default user Postgres.
And eventually you can actually export it as a variable, an environment variable, so it goes to, there you go, it's successful.
One code for this.
Yeah. You can, that means you're already inside the Postgres and it means it works. So to exit out of this, do backslash
Backslash.
Q. Backslash Q. Enter. Okay. What?
You have to do semicolon, right?
I don't, when I do mine.
Try it again?
Wait, try it again with semicolon.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't want to.
Okay, just try control C, make sure it's backslash Q, right?
It's not.
No, it
Oh, it's / Q.
Oh,
My bad.
Back you.
There you go.
Q, not
Q, not, yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. So you're good. We just need to change your default user on your ENV or little environment variable to Postgres. But for talking about, I can set up a time, I know we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Set up a time to do it one-on-one. We might have to restart the installation. You said the environment, the path.
Yeah, I followed along with what Noah was doing.
Okay.
He did also say that he was I mean, in theory, I don't think we did anything else, so it shouldn't have.
It shouldn't, yeah, as long as the installation was complete, it should be fine.
Ahmed, we may just need to schedule some one-on-one time to take a look and take a look at what's going on with the Postgres. You should be able to at least follow along with the recording to get everything else going, and then I'll reach out to you one-on-one sometime this week, and we can gather some time to get it fixed up.
Okay, that works.
Okay. Noah, can you stop sharing, please? All right. We're in the home stretch here. Okay. So now, all my Mac people back. Okay. So now we'll create our database. Once we installed Postgres, it already installed the createDB command for us. So now we'll do createDB, and we'll just say the name of the database that we want it to be. I'm just going to do some sort of an example. So I'll say full stack project example. I'll create DB full stack project example. You see, I hit enter. I didn't get anything back. On the way that we could check that it worked is if you open up that Postgres app, you should now see a new database right here that says full stack or whatever you called it, you know, your full stack project example. Now we've created a Postgres database.
For the Windows users, we don't have the Postgres app. You could just run the code, a command again, and you should get an error saying that it already exists.
Yeah, so if I try to recreate a database with the same name, you can see I get a error that says database so-and-so already exists. So in theory on Windows, a quick, easy way to check is just to try to recreate a database with the same name, and you should get an error saying that you can't use the same name.
Can we cover the changing, I think it has the commands on that, for setting up the user as Postgres for default? We have that?
I'm about to do that right now.
Oh, okay.
The env file?
I'm sorry, what?
In the env file?
Oh, no, I mean like, oh, actually, maybe it was a previous guide, but it has like to export your default user as changing it.
I think it's in the other one.
Yeah, I don't know if we covered that already. That's the problem he's running it.
No.
There you go. So that's what you're gonna want to do. No. So you can open up the other guide, but you need to export PG user. You're gonna use Postgres instead of dev, and then export PG password, but instead of your super user password, it's the password that you created. And then actually the last one you don't really need.
Postgres.
Yeah. It's on the other guide, so you can just reference that.
Move on so we can get this going. So before we forget, so we just created our database. If you go to your .env file, we're gonna want to update our env. So right now where it says /fullstack is the name of your database. So replace this with whatever you just called your database. So I just called mine full stack project example, but you're gonna replace this with the name of whatever you just called your database. This dev right here, this is the Postgres username. So this is whatever username you would use for Postgres. For us on Mac, I believe we just use Postgres. I think that's the default user that gets created. But, and this is Mac only, Mac did not generate a password for this user. So where it says :dev, that anything after that colon, that's the password. So we're just going to remove it. So it's just gonna go Postgres colon, Postgres colon at localhost / and then your database name. So Postgres is the user, and then the colon, if you had a password, would go after it. Windows users, you will have a password. That was when you ran the installer, how I asked you for that password. That would be the password that you would put in right there. Okay. Now, here is the contents of that shell script that is going to help to seed your database. So go ahead and copy this. And then go on back to your project. Inside of database, you're going to create an import.sh file.
So I can do it.
Import.sh. And then you're going to paste in the contents of that file inside of here.
Okay.
Now you should have an import.sh file inside of your database directory with all of these contents. Okay. To make sure that we have some sort of a database, we need to have a schema and we need to have some data. So now the next thing we're going to copy is the schema. So we'll go down here, this create table. This is going to be a part of our schema. So we're going to go to our schema.sql and we'll paste that inside of here. And then we also want to have some example data. So then that next snippet is going to be our data.sql. So we'll copy this. And then we'll go paste that inside of data.sql. So we should have just created 3 new files. We should have created an import.sh where it has the contents of all of that import. We should have had our schema.sql where we pasted in just a default schema. And we should have a data.sql, which is where you should have your dummy data that you'll insert to your database. Okay. Before we test to see if everything's working, any final questions or anything? What are you buying?
This is gonna really quick. So I went to the .env.example, I changed it to the full name of the slash. Delete this.
You delete that one and you put Postgres. Okay. And then for the next one, we see dev, the second one after the phone. That's gonna be your.
What is the import.sh file?
The import.sh.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to help speed up the process of creating and seeding your database. So in your root package.json, you can see you have a script called db import, where it's going to run your import.shell script. So pretty much anytime you ever need, like if you were to make changes to your schema, or if you wanted to add more dummy data, you can run that shell script, and then it's just going to automate the process of running those 2 SQL files essentially. Just makes it so we don't have to keep doing it manually, via SQL every single time we want it.
Right. So that sh stands for shell.
Shell, yeah. So what you did is we used the shell language, which is the scripting language, to create a custom script. So just like how we have a JavaScript file, we're executing a shell file.
Okay, got
Okay.
it.
Now the last thing we can do is test everything and make sure it's working. So let's go on back to our root project. So the root of our repository, example full stack project. Just to make sure we have all of our dependencies installed, we'll run npm install. It's going to install all the dependencies in both our client and our server. We already created our database, so we don't need to create the database, but we do need to import it. So now we're going to do npm run db import, which is going to run this import script, which is going to check to make sure that we have an env file, and then it's going to run our schema.sql, and it's going to run our data.sql. So I'll run that. You should see feedback like this, where it says set, drop schema, create table, insert. This lets me know I dropped my schema, I then created my schema, I then created my table, I then inserted data into those tables. But as long as I see those, I should know, in theory, our database should have some data. The way that we can visualize and we can see is that's where that Table Plus application that I had us install earlier come into play. So if you were to open that up, Table Plus, right here says add a new connection. And then you're gonna add a Postgres. You're gonna click Postgres right here, and then it's gonna ask you what you want to do. So this will be the name. You can call it whatever you want. I'll just say example database. This isn't the actual database name. This is just what you want to call the connection. The host or the socket, you're gonna change this to localhost. You're gonna leave the port as the default, 5432. The user, I think you can also leave empty because it'll use Postgres by default. The password you could also leave empty for Mac since we don't have a password. For Windows users, this is where you would put in your password. So you would probably put in Postgres right here, and then you would put in whatever password you set for that user. But for Mac, we didn't have to worry about that. But right here it says database name, and here's where you're going to put in the name of the database that you're wanting to connect to. So this is what you put in your .env. So right here, when I did /full-stack project example, that's the name of the database. So I'll copy that. And if you hit test, everything should be green. You see, once I hit test, all these things are green. This is letting me know that I am now successfully connected to the database. And the way that I can actually connect is then I can hit connect. And once we hit connect, over here, here are my tables. So you can see I only have one table, it's to-dos. And when I view that table, here's my data. Here's all of those tasks. I have my columns right here. Here's all of the data right here. So I have now successfully, connected to our database. So this is our replacement of PG Web, essentially. So now as a way to visualize our database and our data as we're working on it, we could use Table Plus. So welcome to use PG Web if you want. You'll have to go and install it on your own.
No, did you get it?
And that is essentially everything. The only thing we didn't touch on, which I can touch on real quickly, is how to actually add it to GitHub as a repository. But this is at least the flow of how we can start a full stack project. You can repeat the same flow for every single project. Just will maybe deviate depending on the type of project. Not every project needs to be a full stack project. Maybe you're only doing a front end project. Maybe you're only doing a back end project. So you may not necessarily always have to set it up in a full stack architecture, but it's the same flow. Kind of creating the project on our computer, installing all the packages, all the dependencies, our Git init, our npm init, and getting everything up and going. Any questions before I show us how we can go and actually add it to GitHub? Okay, my laptop is at 4%, so I am going to. Okay, so we now have a Git repository locally. We did our Git init, so it is a Git repository. You can see I have all my active changes here. So we have a few different options of how we actually want to get this project on GitHub. In theory, you could technically do everything from VS Code. They have this source control, and it shows you all of your changes here. So what I could do is I could stage all changes. I could then create a commit, like project init, commit. And you can see publish branch. So now, as soon as I hit publish branch, since this repository doesn't exist on GitHub, it'll both create the repository for me, and it'll automatically push it to GitHub. So I could do push branch. You see the extension wants you to sign in. I could hit allow. Oh, I think it opens something else. Let's see if it's trying to open this up. Looks like it didn't do that correctly. Let me try it again. This. Lost the code. Go back and find it. Oh, maybe I just need to push. I already did my commit. I go to showcase things I don't normally do, and then things break. This is how Robert likes
You
to.
didn't have the upstream set.
I didn't, but I know GitHub will do it for you, which is what I was trying to show.
Oh, okay.
But me trying to show that now broke it. Now I can't view my.
And now we need to do a git commit, right? To save it.
Yeah, but you need to, you already did Git in it, right?
Yes.
Right.
I just run it. I just run the server.
Okay, let me try that again. I'll try it again. If this doesn't work, then I'll just showcase the way that I usually do it. I don't usually do this. Robert likes to do everything via VS Code. I like to do all my Git stuff via the terminal, but he finds it easier, so I like to showcase it because that's what he does. Let me say project init, publish. It wants me to authenticate myself, but then it keeps just sending me here. Doesn't give me any sort of pop-up to authenticate myself. Okay. So I will not do this way, and I will just show you the way that I normally do
Publish the branch. Save it. Publish branch.
Now let me. Okay. So the way that I normally do things is I go to GitHub, and then I go to new repository, and then I call it whatever I want. So usually they'll match, but so I'll just copy this. So I'll call it example full stack project. If I want it to be public or private, so you can change it at any time, so it doesn't necessarily matter. And then here's the important thing. I do not click this step where it says add a README. If you click it, then it's going to generate the repository with a file. So then you would be a better approach if you wanted to clone it and then kind of go it from here. Since I already have a repository on my computer, I already have all the files. So I just kind of want an empty blank repository. So all you want to do is give it a name, set whatever you want the privacy to be, and then hit create repository. And you can see it takes us here. And then it says, because it's empty, so it says, oh, are you creating a new one? But we don't want that, we want this one. We want to push an existing repository from the command line. So, did I already do a commit? I haven't. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do a add and a commit. So we're going to do a git add dot so that we stage all of our files. Now you can see everything is in green. We're going to do a commit. So I'll just say project init. I'll do a commit project init. Now, if we go on back to GitHub, we want to copy this line right here where it says git remote add origin. So the situation that we're in, I have a repository on my local, and I now have a repository on GitHub. They don't know about each other. I have my local and I have my GitHub. So what git remote add origin does is it's going to tell my local repository whose its origin. And so now this is going to say that its origin is GitHub. And this is how we're actually linking our local and our remote. I'm telling my remote and telling my local that they are going to be kind of referencing. So we'll copy this. We'll paste that in here. You're not going to get any feedback. But now if I do git push origin main, you can now see it says total 40 because I probably had 40 different files and it pushed to my main branch. Now when I refresh the page, you now see here is our code, our project that we just created. And we now created our own kind of repository. This is one way. You can create the repository on GitHub first, then clone it, and then do all of your creating of your different directories. You can install a GitHub CLI tool that will automate that process to you. I like to use that one too, but this is kind of the default way that I use. Caroline?
I was wondering, would it be important to have a clone of the repository? Would that be something I should consider since I've been having those problems with the GitHub with the fatal loose object and stuff? Or how
Well,
should I go?
the only way that we can get anything from GitHub on our computer is via clone. So we clone everything. Any sort of repository is a clone.
So then I would have the original code on my local computer and then GitHub would be my clone?
GitHub
So-
is always your origin.
Okay, so locally I would have potentially like a mismatch with GitHub. It would just be locally always. So if there was ever a problem with the fatal loose object, I would just go to my GitHub, but I would have to no, because before we were deleting all of the Dockers. Remember we were deleting the Docker container volume?
Uh-huh.
So hopefully it's not going to happen again. I just kind of wanted to understand.
You would do the exact same flow. You would just delete the repository on your computer, and then you would reclone it. Just like what we did with the LZ environment. We deleted the repository, and then you recloned it. You would do the exact same thing here. You would delete it from your computer, and then you reclone it again.
Okay. And then what were you saying just now about the automating of you mentioned a program or an extension just now?
There's a GitHub CLI, and so you can do this to do a lot of interacting with GitHub. So for instance, just as a quick flow, let's say I want to go to my personal. So I'm going to say, hey, GitHub repo, I want to create. And it's like, oh, do you want to create a new repository on GitHub from scratch? Do I want to push an existing one? Oh, I want to create a new one. What do you want to call it? Some repo. Who do you want the owner to be? So it's just another way of interacting with GitHub. So I can do GitHub actions from my terminal. I don't have to actually go to GitHub's website to do it. So I was saying, not necessarily automate, but an easier way or another way of creating the repositories is by using this command line tool because it'll just do it GitHub automatically.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but the flow that I showed is generally the flow that I use for most of my projects. Yeah. Any final questions about anything before we move on? All right, I guess there's nowhere to move on before we leave. Yeah. Again, I know dev environments, it's one of those personalized, customized things. So if you ever, Caroline, I know you were interested in my terminal stuff, I'd be happy to send it out. But if you ever had individual customized questions or you need help, customizing stuff, feel free to reach out. Ahmed, I'll reach out to you tomorrow, and then I'll schedule some time with you to find some time to meet and take a look at your database.
I have office hours in a little bit if you want to just go in.
You could also do that. Gerardo also has office hours tonight, so if you are free and available tonight, you can stop by his office hours.
Starting in 6 minutes, so.
Yeah.
You just finish it up.
Yeah. Feel free to join that, or I can connect with you later on in the week or tomorrow. Anyone else?
So we can talk.
Okay. Then I'll send the recording to Leah. She'll upload it. I don't know where, but it'll be somewhere. So if you ever need to access it, you can go back and watch the recordings. And then if you have any other questions, reach out.
Can you upload it in our YouTube, the channel that you had created? Because we still have access to that.
Yes, I'm not the owner of the Zoom call, so I personally cannot access the recording. Leah's gonna have to do it, but I'll tell her to upload it in that location.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, I'll stop the recording.